Noah Bennett stared at the woman trembling on his doorstep, drenched, desperate, and clearly running from something far more dangerous than the December storm. Behind him, his 6-year-old daughter slept peacefully, unaware that their quiet life was about to shatter. The stranger's eyes held a terror he recognized instantly. She wasn't just lost. She was trapped, and the moment he opened that door wider, he became part of whatever she was running from. What Noah didn't know was that this single act of compassion would ignite a war with one of the most powerful men in the country, a billionaire who never lost, who controlled everything he touched, and who would stop at nothing to destroy anyone who dared take what he considered his. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below and hit that like button. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let me tell you about the night everything changed. The December wind howled through the pines surrounding Noah Bennett's cottage, carrying sleet that struck the windows like scattered gravel. Inside, the wood stove crackled, throwing dancing shadows across the worn furniture that had seen better years. Noah sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago, staring at the scattered bills laid out before him like accusatory evidence of a life barely held together. 32 years old, and some days he felt ancient. Other days he felt like he was still that terrified 26-year-old standing in a hospital corridor, being told his wife wouldn't make it through the night. Emma had been gone for 6 years now, but grief had a way of making time irrelevant. Some losses didn't heal, they just became furniture you learned to navigate around in the dark. The cottage creaked in the wind, familiar sounds that usually comforted him. He'd bought this place with Emma when Lily was still just a hope, not yet a reality. It sat on 3 acres of scrubland 20 minutes outside Portland, far enough from the city to feel like a different world. The paint was peeling, the porch sagged on the north corner, and the plumbing made sounds that would terrify most homeowners. But it was theirs. His and Lily's. Their fortress against a world that had already taken too much. "Daddy?" The small voice from the stairs made Noah look up. Lily stood there in her purple pajamas with the unicorns, one hand gripping her stuffed rabbit, the other rubbing sleep from her eyes. At 6 years old, she was the perfect blend of Emma's gentle spirit and Noah's stubborn resilience, though right now she just looked like a tired little girl who should have been asleep 2 hours ago. "Hey, Firefly." Noah pushed back from the table, crossing the small kitchen in 3 strides. "Bad dream?" Lily shook her head, dark curls bouncing. "The wind is too loud." Noah scooped her up, feeling her small arms wrap around his neck with absolute trust. This weight in his arms, this responsibility, this fierce love was everything. It was why he worked 70-hour weeks landscaping other people's yards, why he took on extra jobs trimming trees and clearing brush, why he ate ramen 3 nights a week so Lily could have fresh fruit and the good cereal she liked. "It's just the storm talking to the trees," he murmured, carrying her back toward the stairs. "Telling them stories about where it's been." "What kind of stories?" "Adventures. The storm's been all over the world today, over mountains and oceans and cities where people speak languages we've never heard." He climbed the narrow staircase, each step creaking its own familiar protest. "But you know what? Even with all those adventures, the storm chose to visit us tonight. Makes us pretty special, don't you think?" Lily's room was small but warm, decorated with drawings she'd made at school and glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to the ceiling in no particular constellation. Noah tucked her back under her quilt, a patchwork Emma had started and he'd finished, badly, after she died. "Will the storm stay all night?" Lily asked, her voice already heavy with returning sleep. "Probably, but we're safe here. This old house has weathered 100 storms worse than this one." Noah kissed her forehead. "Now close those eyes. Morning's going to come early, and Mrs. Chen doesn't like it when we're late for breakfast." Mrs. Chen ran the small daycare 3 blocks from Lily's elementary school. She was 70, tough as leather, and charged Noah half what she should because she'd known Emma and had a soft spot for single fathers who were doing their best. It was one of a dozen small mercies that kept Noah's head above water. Lily's eyes drifted shut, her breathing evening out almost immediately. Noah stood there for a long moment, watching her sleep, feeling that familiar mixture of love and terror that defined his life now. Every choice he made, every risk he took or didn't take, it all filtered through this single question: what's best for Lily? It was a question that had kept him cautious for 6 years, kept him from dating, from taking chances, from being anything other than the steady, reliable foundation his daughter needed. Some of his friends, the few who'd stuck around after Emma died, told him he was too young to live like a monk, that Lily would benefit from seeing him happy, from having more people in their lives. But Noah had learned the hard way that love was a lottery where the house always won in the end. You could pour everything you had into another person, build a whole life around them, and then one drunk driver could erase it all in the time it took to run a red light. Emma had been 3 months pregnant with their second child when she died. Noah had lost not just his wife, but the future they'd planned, the family they were building. So he played it safe now, worked hard, loved his daughter, and kept the rest of the world at a manageable distance. He was halfway down the stairs when the knock came. 3 sharp raps on the back door, urgent, insistent, cutting through the storm's howl like a blade. Noah froze, one hand on the banister. It was past 11 on a Thursday night. Nobody came out here by accident, especially not in weather like this. The cottage sat at the end of a long gravel drive, invisible from the main road. You had to know it was here to find it. The knock came again, harder this time. Desperate. Noah's first instinct was to ignore it. Whatever was on the other side of that door, it meant complications. Meant letting the outside world intrude on the careful bubble he'd built around Lily and himself. But then he thought about Emma, about the kind of person she'd been. She would have already opened the door, would have probably had coffee brewing and a blanket ready. Noah moved through the kitchen, past the table with its scattered bills, and pulled aside the thin curtain covering the back door's window. A woman stood on his porch, and even through the sleet and darkness, Noah could see she was in trouble. She was maybe 40, 42, with dark hair plastered to her skull and mascara streaking down her face. Her clothes, expensive even in their ruined state, clung to her frame. She had her arms wrapped around herself, shivering violently, and when she saw Noah through the window, something like hope flashed across her features. "Please." Her voice was barely audible over the storm. "Please, I need help." Every rational instinct screamed at Noah to keep the door closed, to tell her to go back to the main road, to call someone else, to handle this crisis literally anywhere but here. He had a daughter asleep upstairs. He had a life carefully calibrated to avoid exactly this kind of chaos. But there was something in the woman's eyes, a terror that went beyond being cold or lost. She wasn't just asking for help, she was begging for sanctuary. Noah unlocked the door. The woman nearly fell across the threshold, bringing a gust of freezing wind and rain with her. Up close, Noah could see she was older than he'd first thought, with fine lines around her eyes and a kind of exhausted elegance that spoke of a life very different from his own. "Thank you." Her teeth chattered so hard she could barely form words. "Thank you, I'm so sorry. I didn't know where else. My car broke down about 2 miles back and my phone's dead, and I've been walking." "Okay." Noah cut her off gently, already moving toward the hall closet where he kept towels. "It's okay. You're inside now. Let's get you warm, then we'll figure everything else out." He returned with 2 towels and his old bathrobe, the fleece one Emma had bought him 3 Christmases before she died. The woman took them with shaking hands. "The bathroom's through there." Noah pointed down the short hallway. "Get out of those wet clothes before you get hypothermia. I'll make coffee." The woman nodded, clutching the towels like lifelines, and disappeared into the bathroom. Noah heard the door lock click, and something in his chest eased slightly. Whatever she was running from, at least she felt safe enough to close a door between them. He set about making coffee, moving through the familiar motions while his mind raced. This was insane. He'd just let a complete stranger into his house in the middle of the night with his daughter asleep upstairs. But what was the alternative? Let her freeze to death in the storm. Call the police and have them show up with lights and sirens and wake Lily with questions about strange women and broken-down cars? The bathroom door opened 15 minutes later, and the woman emerged looking slightly more human. The bathrobe swallowed her frame, and she'd towel-dried her hair into a dark, chaotic halo around her face. Without the running mascara and the desperate fear, Noah could see she was actually striking. Sharp cheekbones, intelligent eyes, the kind of presence that suggested she was used to walking into rooms and being noticed. "Sit." Noah gestured to the table, pushing a mug of coffee toward her. "Careful, it's hot." The woman wrapped both hands around the mug and inhaled the steam like it was oxygen. "I can't thank you enough. When my car died, I thought—" She cut herself off, shaking her head. "I'm Vivian Laurent." "Noah Bennett." He settled into the chair across from her, maintaining a polite distance. What happened with your car? Vivian took a sip of coffee, wincing slightly at the heat. I don't know. Everything just shut off. The engine, the lights, everything. I tried calling for a tow, but there's no cell service out here, and I couldn't just sit there all night. Noah nodded. Cell service was spotty this far out. It was one of the things he actually liked about the location, made it harder for the outside world to intrude. Where were you heading? Vivian's hands tightened on the mug. Away. The single word hung in the air between them, heavy with implications Noah wasn't sure he wanted to explore. But there was something in her voice, a bone-deep weariness that went beyond a simple car breakdown. Away from what? He asked quietly. Vivian met his eyes, and Noah saw the calculation happening behind them. She was deciding how much to tell him, weighing trust against necessity. My husband, she said finally. I was driving away from my husband. Noah felt his stomach tighten. This was getting more complicated by the second. Is he going to come looking for you? Eventually. Vivian's laugh was bitter. But not tonight. Tonight, he thinks I'm at our house in Lake Oswego, probably asleep or reading or doing whatever invisible thing he assumes I do when he's not paying attention. He's at some tech conference in San Francisco until Sunday. Tech conference. Noah processed this. Your husband works in tech? Owns. My husband owns one of the largest artificial intelligence companies on the West Coast. Vivian set down the coffee mug with deliberate care. You've probably heard of it, Neuraldyne. They just went public last quarter for $17 billion. Noah felt the temperature in the room drop about 20 degrees. He didn't follow the tech world closely, but even he'd heard of Neuraldyne. It had been all over the news last year, some groundbreaking AI development that was supposed to revolutionize everything from healthcare to climate modeling. Your husband is Marcus Laurent. It wasn't a question. For now, Vivian's voice was flat. Though, if I have anything to say about it, not for much longer. Noah leaned back in his chair, trying to reconcile this information with the soaking wet, desperate woman who'd been pounding on his door 20 minutes ago. Marcus Laurent was a billionaire, one of the new tech elite who seemed to be buying up half of Portland, turning neighborhoods into playgrounds for the ultra-wealthy. And his wife was currently sitting in Noah Bennett's kitchen wearing his dead wife's bathrobe. You're leaving him, Noah said. I'm escaping him. Vivian picked up the coffee again, using it to warm her hands. There's a difference. Noah wanted to ask what that difference was, but something in Vivian's expression suggested she'd already said more than she intended. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the storm rage outside. My daughter's asleep upstairs, Noah said finally. Lily, she's 6. I need you to understand. I'm helping you because you clearly need help, but my first responsibility is to her. If this situation is going to bring any kind of trouble to this house, it won't, Vivian cut him off quickly. I promise. Marcus doesn't even know this place exists. I found it by accident when my car died. As far as anyone knows, I'm still in Lake Oswego. Noah studied her face, looking for lies or evasion. All he saw was exhaustion and a kind of desperate honesty. Okay, he said, you can stay here tonight. In the morning, we'll call a tow truck for your car and figure out next steps. But Vivian, I know. She met his eyes. I know what I'm asking just by being here, and I'm sorry, but I didn't have anywhere else to go. That statement hit harder than Noah expected. This woman, who presumably had access to millions of dollars, who could afford any hotel or rental property in the state, had nowhere to go. What kind of marriage created that kind of isolation? The couch pulls out into a bed, Noah said, standing. It's not fancy, but it's warm and dry. I'll get you some blankets. As he moved toward the linen closet, Vivian spoke again, her voice soft. Noah? Who's Emma? He froze, hand on the closet door. What? The bathrobe. Vivian gestured to the fleece she wore. It has the name embroidered on the pocket, Emma. Noah swallowed hard. My wife. She died 6 years ago. I'm sorry. Vivian's voice carried genuine compassion. I didn't mean to. I can take it off if it's... No! Noah pulled blankets from the shelf with more force than necessary. It's fine. She would have wanted someone to use it. She wasn't the kind of person who liked things going to waste. He set up the couch bed in mechanical silence, hyper-aware of Vivian watching him from the kitchen table. When it was done, he straightened and faced her. Bathroom's down the hall. Kitchen's obviously here. Help yourself to anything in the fridge if you get hungry. I'm a light sleeper, so if you need anything, just call out. Thank you, Noah. Vivian stood, pulling the bathrobe tighter. I mean it. You have no idea what this means. Noah just nodded, suddenly exhausted down to his bones. Get some rest. Morning's going to come early. He climbed the stairs to his own room, checking on Lily one more time before collapsing into bed. Through the window, he could see the storm still raging, wind bending the pines almost horizontal. Somewhere out there was a broken-down luxury car belonging to one of the richest men in Oregon, and downstairs, that man's wife was sleeping on Noah's couch, wearing his dead wife's bathrobe, running from a life Noah couldn't begin to imagine. He'd made a lot of questionable decisions in his 32 years, but letting Vivian Laurent through his door might be the one that changed everything. Noah closed his eyes and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. Morning came gray and sullen, the storm having blown itself out sometime before dawn. Noah woke to his alarm at 5:30, the same as always, and lay there for a moment trying to convince himself the previous night had been a strange dream. Then he heard movement downstairs. Quiet, careful, someone trying not to wake the house, and knew it had all been terribly real. He dressed quickly in worn jeans and a flannel shirt, checked on Lily, who was still sleeping soundly, and headed downstairs. Vivian stood in his kitchen, attempting to make coffee with the kind of focused concentration that suggested she wasn't entirely sure how his ancient machine worked. She'd folded the blankets neatly on the couch and was still wearing the bathrobe, her hair pulled back in a messy knot. Morning, Noah said. Vivian jumped slightly, turning with one hand pressed to her chest. In the gray morning light, Noah could see details he'd missed the night before. The expensive watch on her wrist, the wedding ring that was probably worth more than his truck, the way she carried herself even in borrowed clothes like someone used to walking into boardrooms and being taken seriously. I was trying not to wake you, she said, but I think I'm murdering your coffee maker. Noah couldn't help but smile slightly. It's temperamental. Here, let me. He moved past her, and Vivian stepped back to give him room. The kitchen was small enough that they were still uncomfortably close, and Noah was hyper-aware of the intimacy of the situation, this stranger in his space, in his dead wife's clothes, first thing in the morning. Sleep okay? He asked, focusing on measuring coffee grounds. Better than I have in months, actually. Vivian leaned against the counter, watching him work. Your couch is more comfortable than my bed at home. Noah doubted that was literally true, but he understood what she meant. Sometimes comfort had nothing to do with thread count or mattress quality. What's the plan? He asked as the coffee maker gurgled to life. For your car, I mean. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. I was thinking about that. If we call a tow truck, there'll be a record, credit card transaction, service report, the address where it broke down. Marcus monitors everything, our accounts, my phone records, even the GPS in my car. It's how he keeps track of me. Noah turned to look at her, the morning light harsh on her face. He tracks you. Constantly. He says it's for security, that someone in his position needs to know where his family is at all times. Vivian's voice was carefully neutral. But it's really about control, about making sure I never go anywhere or do anything he doesn't approve of. Noah searched for a word that wouldn't be offensive. Concerning. That's one way to put it. Vivian accepted the coffee mug Noah handed her. Look, I know how this sounds. Poor little rich wife complaining about her controlling husband while living in a mansion and shopping with unlimited credit cards. I know the optics aren't great. I wasn't thinking that, Noah said quietly. Most people do. Vivian wrapped both hands around the mug, the same gesture from last night. Noah was starting to recognize it as a self-soothing habit. They see the lifestyle, the money, the privilege, and they think, what does she have to complain about? But money doesn't buy you freedom when the person controlling it uses it as a leash. Noah thought about his scattered bills on the table, about working 70-hour weeks just to keep his head above water. He'd spent 6 years envying people with resources, with options, with the luxury of not having to choose between fixing the truck or buying Lily new shoes. But Vivian was right. All that money meant nothing if you were trapped. "So what do you want to do about the car?" he asked. "Leave it." Vivian said it with surprising decisiveness. "Eventually, someone will report it abandoned, and it'll get towed to an impound lot. By the time Marcus's people track it down, I'll be long gone." "Gone where?" Vivian met his eyes over the rim of her coffee mug. "I was hoping you might let me stay here, just for a few days, while I figure things out." Noah felt his entire body tense. This was exactly the kind of complication he'd been trying to avoid. Having Vivian here for one night was risky enough, but letting her stay? That meant becoming actively involved in whatever war she was waging with her billionaire husband. "Vivian, I can pay you." She set down the coffee mug with careful precision. "I have access to one account Marcus doesn't monitor, an old trust fund from my grandmother. It's not much by his standards, but it's enough. I can pay you whatever rent you think is fair, plus help with groceries, utilities." "It's not about money," Noah interrupted. "It's about Lily, about what's safe for her. If your husband is as controlling as you say, what happens when he figures out where you are? What happens when he shows up here?" "He won't." Vivian's voice carried absolute certainty. "Marcus doesn't do the dirty work himself. He'll hire investigators, maybe even lawyers, but he won't come personally. He's too important, too busy running his empire. And by the time they track me here, if they track me here, I'll have filed for divorce and established legal protection." Noah wanted to believe her, but 6 years of single fatherhood had taught him to trust his gut when something felt risky, and this felt risky as hell. But then he looked at Vivian, really looked at her, and saw something that cut through all his careful caution. Fear. Bone-deep, exhausted fear of going back to whatever she'd escaped from. 3 days, he heard himself say. "You can stay for 3 days while you figure out your next move. But if anything happens that puts Lily at risk, anything, you leave immediately. Deal?" Relief washed over Vivian's face so completely that Noah felt a pang of guilt for almost saying no. "Deal. Thank you, Noah. You have no idea." "Daddy?" Both adults turned. Lily stood at the bottom of the stairs in her unicorn pajamas, one hand gripping the banister, staring at the strange woman in her father's kitchen. "Hey, Firefly." Noah moved toward his daughter, hyper-aware of how this must look to a 6-year-old. "You're up early." "Who's that?" Lily's voice was small, uncertain. Noah glanced at Vivian, who had gone very still, like she was trying to make herself invisible. "This is Vivian. Her car broke down in the storm last night, so she's staying with us for a few days until she gets things sorted out." Lily processed this information with a child's blunt curiosity. "Why is she wearing Mommy's robe?" Noah felt his chest constrict. Lily rarely mentioned Emma anymore. She'd been so young when her mother died that most of her memories were more photographed than actual recollection. But every now and then something would trigger her awareness of all they'd lost. "Because all her clothes were wet from the rain," Noah explained gently. "We're going to help her out, okay? Be a good host." Lily studied Vivian with the kind of frank assessment only children could get away with. "Are you nice?" Vivian's laugh was soft, genuine. "I try to be, though I'm much nicer after I've had coffee and breakfast." "Me too." Lily's expression shifted from suspicion to tentative approval. "Daddy makes good pancakes on Fridays. It's almost Friday." "It is almost Friday," Vivian agreed. "Think he'd make some for both of us?" Lily looked up at Noah with those huge eyes that could convince him to do just about anything. "Can we have pancakes, Daddy?" Noah felt the moment shift, felt his careful boundaries blur and soften. He'd planned to keep Vivian at arm's length, to maintain the distance between her crisis and his carefully constructed life. But Lily was already warming to this stranger, already making room for her in their morning routine. "Pancakes it is," he said, surrendering to the inevitable. "But you need to get dressed first, Firefly. Can't eat breakfast in pajamas." Lily scampered back upstairs, and Noah turned to find Vivian watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "She's lovely," Vivian said softly. "She looks like you." "She looks like her mother." Noah moved to the fridge, pulling out eggs and milk. "I just get credit by proximity." They worked in comfortable silence, Noah mixing batter while Vivian found plates and silverware without needing to ask where things were. It should have been strange, this domestic scene with a woman he'd known for less than 12 hours. But somehow it wasn't. Lily returned dressed in leggings and an oversized sweater, her curls pulled into two lopsided ponytails that Noah knew she'd insisted on doing herself. She climbed into her usual chair and watched with interest as Noah poured batter onto the griddle. "Do you have kids?" Lily asked Vivian directly. "No." Something flickered across Vivian's face. Regret, maybe, or old grief. "I always wanted them, but it never worked out." "Why not?" "Lily." Noah's voice carried a gentle warning. "That's a personal question." "It's okay." Vivian smiled at Lily. "Sometimes life doesn't go the way you plan. Sometimes the person you marry doesn't want the same things you do." Lily considered this with the seriousness only a 6-year-old could muster. "My daddy says life is what happens while you're making other plans." "Your daddy is very wise." Vivian accepted the plate of pancakes Noah handed her. "Thank you." They ate breakfast together, and Noah watched Lily slowly open up to Vivian, asking questions about where she lived, what her favorite color was, whether she liked unicorns or dragons better. Vivian answered each question thoughtfully, never talking down to Lily, treating her curiosity with respect. "I have to get ready for work," Noah said when they'd finished eating. "Mrs. Chen will be here at 7 to pick up Lily for school." "Mrs. Chen?" Vivian started clearing plates. "Daycare provider. She takes Lily to school and picks her up after. I don't usually get home until 6. Vivian nodded, processing this information. "What do you do?" "Landscaping, mostly. Yards, tree trimming, seasonal cleanups." Noah didn't mention that he was barely making ends meet, that every job was essential, that missing even one day of work could cascade into crisis. "It's good work, keeps me outside." "And leaves you free to make pancakes on Friday mornings," Vivian added. "When I can." Noah glanced at the clock. "Look, you should probably stay inside today, just in case. Help yourself to anything in the house. Books, TV, whatever. I'll be back around 6. "Noah!" Vivian caught his arm as he moved past her. "Thank you for all of this. I know it's not easy letting a stranger into your life." 3 days, Noah reminded her gently. "After that, you need a better plan than hiding in my cottage." "I know." Vivian released his arm. "I'm working on it." Noah headed upstairs to shower and change, trying not to think too hard about what he was doing. By the time he came back down, Mrs. Chen had arrived, a tiny Vietnamese woman with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Who is the woman in your kitchen?" Mrs. Chen asked in her accented English, watching through the window as Vivian helped Lily put on her backpack. "Friend," Noah lied. "Car trouble. Stay in a few days." Mrs. Chen's expression suggested she didn't believe him for a second, but was choosing not to press the issue. "You be careful, Noah Bennett. You have a good heart, but good hearts get broken." "I'm always careful," Noah said, which was mostly true. Mrs. Chen just snorted and went inside to collect Lily. Noah watched them drive away, his daughter waving through the back window, and felt the familiar ache of letting her go even for a few hours. When he turned back, Vivian was standing on the porch, still wearing the bathrobe, looking utterly out of place against the backdrop of his weathered cottage. "I really will be gone in 3 days," she said. "I promise I won't make this your problem any longer than necessary." Noah wanted to believe her, wanted to think this was a simple situation with a clear ending. But something in his gut told him that Vivian Laurent's problems were just beginning, and by letting her through his door, he'd made them his problems too. Noah drove toward his first job of the day, hands tight on the steering wheel of his battered pickup, trying to focus on the work ahead instead of the surreal situation he'd left behind. A billionaire's wife was currently alone in his house, wearing his dead wife's bathrobe, hiding from a husband who could probably buy and sell Noah's entire life without noticing the expense. The absurdity of it would have been funny if it wasn't so potentially dangerous. His phone buzzed in the cup holder. Marcus Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen, asking if Noah could squeeze in an emergency cleanup job on Saturday. A windstorm had taken down a branch that was now blocking the client's driveway. Noah texted back a quick affirmative. He couldn't afford to turn down work, especially not with the truck's transmission making ominous grinding sounds every time he shifted into third gear. The day passed in a blur of mulch and pruning shears, of clients who wanted their yards to look magazine perfect, but didn't want to pay what that perfection actually cost. Noah worked mechanically, his body going through familiar motions while his mind kept drifting back to the cottage, to Vivian, to the way Lily had looked at her over breakfast with cautious curiosity, like she was trying to figure out if this stranger was someone worth trusting. By the time Noah pulled into his driveway at 6:15, exhausted and covered in a fine layer of dirt and wood chips, he half expected Vivian to be gone. Maybe she'd called someone to pick her up. Maybe she'd realized how crazy it was to hide out in a stranger's cottage and found a better option. But her car was still wherever it had died 2 miles down the road, and when Noah walked through his front door, he was hit with the smell of something cooking. Actual cooking, not the frozen pizzas or boxed mac and cheese that constituted most of his dinner repertoire. Vivian stood at his stove, stirring something in a pot, and she'd changed out of the bathrobe into clothes that Noah recognized from his own closet. An old flannel shirt of his rolled up at the sleeves, and a pair of his sweatpants cinched tight at the waist. She'd pulled her dark hair back into a ponytail, and there was color in her cheeks that hadn't been there this morning. "I hope you don't mind," she said, gesturing at the stove. "I found chicken in your freezer and vegetables in the crisper, and I was going crazy with nothing to do all day, so I made soup." Noah set down his work bag, trying to process this domestic scene. "You made soup?" "Chicken and vegetable. Nothing fancy, but it's edible." Vivian turned down the heat under the pot. "Lily's doing homework at the table. She told me you usually help her after dinner." Noah moved to the kitchen table where Lily was indeed bent over a workbook, tongue poking out in concentration as she formed letters with painstaking care. "Hey, Firefly, how was school?" "Good. We learned about penguins." Lily looked up with bright eyes. "Did you know emperor penguins can hold their breath for 20 minutes? "I did not know that." Noah kissed the top of her head, breathing in the kid shampoo smell of her hair. "That's pretty amazing." "Vivian knows lots of stuff about animals," Lily announced. "She told me about how wolves travel in packs and take care of each other's babies." Noah glanced at Vivian, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "We were talking about family structures. It seemed relevant." The three of them sat down to dinner together, and Noah couldn't remember the last time someone had cooked for him. Certainly not since Emma died. The soup was good, simple and nourishing, the kind of meal that tasted like someone actually cared whether you ate properly. "This is really good," Noah said, and meant it. "My grandmother taught me," Vivian replied. "She believed that being able to feed yourself and others was the most important skill anyone could learn. Marcus always thought it was beneath me to cook. We had a chef, caterers for everything, but I missed it, honestly. Missed making something with my own hands." Lily had finished her soup and was eyeing the adults with the kind of scrutiny that suggested she was trying to figure out the dynamics at play. "Are you and Daddy friends?" Vivian smiled. "I hope so. Your dad's been very kind to me." "My daddy's nice to everyone," Lily said matter-of-factly. "Even mean people. Mrs. Chen says he has a soft heart." "Mrs. Chen talks too much," Noah muttered, but he was smiling. After dinner, while Noah helped Lily with her homework, Vivian cleaned up the kitchen with the kind of efficiency that suggested she'd done this before despite what she'd said about having staff. When Lily was finally in bed, her own bedtime story ritual complete, Noah came back downstairs to find Vivian sitting on the couch with a book she'd pulled from his shelf. "Steinbeck," she said, holding up the worn copy of East of Eden. "Good taste." "Emma's, actually. She was the reader in the family." Noah settled into the armchair across from her, suddenly aware of how small the living room was. How intimate this felt. "I keep meaning to read more of them, but by the time Lily's asleep, I'm usually too tired to focus on anything more complex than sports highlights." Vivian set the book aside. "Can I ask you something? And you can tell me it's none of my business if you want." "Okay. Why landscaping? I mean, not that there's anything wrong with it, but you seem like someone who could have done anything. There's an intelligence in how you talk, how you move through the world, so why manual labor?" Noah was quiet for a long moment, trying to decide how much truth to offer this woman who was still essentially a stranger. "I was in college when Emma got pregnant with Lily, engineering program at Portland State. We'd been together since high school, and we were young and stupid and thought we had everything figured out. What happened? Reality, bills, student loans. Emma's parents disowned her for getting pregnant before marriage, and my dad was already gone by then. Heart attack when I was 19. My mom tried to help, but she was barely making ends meet herself. Noah rubbed his face, feeling the day's exhaustion settle into his bones. I dropped out junior year to work full time. Figured I'd go back eventually, but then Emma got sick and suddenly I was a single father with a 2-year-old in medical debt that would have made you weep. Landscaping was something I could do immediately without a degree that paid decent money. So I did it. And you never went back. Never had the time or the money. And honestly, after a while, it stopped feeling like a sacrifice. I'm good at what I do. I like working with my hands, being outside. It's honest work. Noah met her eyes. But you didn't ask because you actually care about my career choices. You asked because you're trying to figure out what kind of person takes in strangers who show up in the middle of the night. Vivian's smile was rueful. Maybe a little of both. You interest me, Noah Bennett. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone more jaded, maybe? Someone who'd have asked more questions, demanded more answers. Someone who'd have seen opportunity in helping the wife of a billionaire. Vivian pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. Most people, when they find out who I'm married to, they immediately start calculating what they can get out of knowing me. But you just made me breakfast and went to work. I'm not most people. No, Vivian agreed softly. You're really not. The moment stretched between them, loaded with something Noah couldn't quite name. He broke eye contact first, clearing his throat. You said 3 days. What's the actual plan, Vivian? Because hiding in my cottage isn't a long-term solution. Vivian's expression shifted, the vulnerability sliding behind practiced composure. Monday, I have an appointment with a divorce attorney, someone who specializes in high-net-worth separations and has experience dealing with men like Marcus. I'm going to file, establish legal separation, and start the process of extracting myself from everything that ties me to him. And you think he's just going to let you go? No. Vivian's laugh was hollow. Marcus doesn't let go of anything he considers his, but he also doesn't like public spectacle. If I play this right, if I have good representation, and don't give him ammunition to paint me as unstable or vindictive, he might settle just to make it all go away quietly. Noah thought about the man he'd read about in business magazines, the tech genius who'd built an empire on artificial intelligence and disruption. Men like that didn't become billionaires by backing down from fights. And if he doesn't settle, then it gets ugly. Vivian met his eyes with something that looked like steel beneath the exhaustion. But I'm done being afraid of ugly. I've lived in a beautiful prison for 15 years, and I'd rather have messy freedom than pristine captivity. 15 years. Noah did the math. You were young when you married him. 26, fresh out of grad school with a photography degree, and a lot of naive ideas about love and partnership. Vivian's voice turned distant, like she was looking back at a different person entirely. Marcus was 15 years older, successful, charming when he wanted to be. My parents loved him. My friends were jealous. Everyone said I'd won the lottery. But you hadn't. No, I just sold myself to someone who saw me as another asset to acquire and control. Vivian stood abruptly, moving to the window that looked out over Noah's dark yard. The first few years were okay. He was busy building the company, and I had my photography. But as Neurodyne grew, as Marcus got more powerful and more paranoid about protecting his empire, I became less of a wife and more of a liability he needed to manage. The tracking, the monitoring, the constant control over where I went and who I saw, it all happened so gradually that by the time I realized I was trapped, the cage was already locked. Noah wanted to say something comforting, but platitudes felt insulting in the face of what she was describing. Instead, he just listened, giving her space to speak. I tried to leave twice before, Vivian continued, still facing the window. The first time 8 years ago, I made it as far as Seattle before Marcus's lawyers caught up with me. They had documentation that I'd been having psychiatric issues, that I needed help. It was all fabricated, but convincing enough that I came back voluntarily rather than risk being committed. The second time, 5 years ago, I got smarter, saved cash, planned better, made it almost to the Canadian border. What happened? Marcus happened. He showed up personally that time, just him and me in a hotel room in Bellingham, and he made it very clear what would happen if I tried to leave again. Not to me, but to the people I cared about. My sister, my few remaining friends, the gallery owner who'd been showing my work. He didn't make explicit threats, but the implications were crystal clear. He could ruin lives without breaking a sweat, and he would if I embarrassed him publicly. Noah felt anger rising in his chest, hot and unfamiliar. He wasn't a violent person, had never been in a real fight in his life. But the thought of someone threatening the people Vivian cared about to keep her imprisoned made his hands curl into fists. "So why now?" he asked. "Why risk it again after 5 years?" Vivian turned from the window, and in the lamplight, Noah could see tears tracking down her face. "Because I'm 42 years old, and I realized if I don't leave now, I never will. I'll be 50, 60, 70, still living in that beautiful house with that horrible man, waiting for permission to have my own life. And I can't—" Her voice broke. "I can't do that. I'd rather risk everything and fail than spend another year being invisible in my own existence." Noah stood, crossing the small room to where Vivian stood. He didn't touch her, didn't try to comfort her physically. That felt like an invasion she hadn't invited. But he stood close enough that she knew she wasn't alone. "You're going to make it this time," he said quietly. "I don't know how I know that, but I do. You're different than you were 5 years ago, stronger." "I don't feel strong. I feel terrified." Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's being scared and doing it anyway. Noah offered a small smile. "That's what I tell Lily when she's afraid of the dark. Feel the fear, but do the thing that scares you anyway." Vivian wiped at her tears with the sleeve of Noah's borrowed flannel. "You're a good father, Noah. Lily's lucky to have you. Most days I feel like I'm barely keeping it together, like one wrong move and the whole careful structure I've built comes crashing down." Noah shoved his hands in his pockets. "But we do what we have to do, right? For the people we love." "Right." Vivian took a shaky breath, composing herself. "I should let you get some rest. I'm sure you're exhausted." She was giving him an out, Noah realized. A chance to retreat to his room, to maintain boundaries, to keep this situation from becoming more complicated than it already was. The smart thing would be to take it, to say goodnight, and preserve the careful distance between them. Instead, he heard himself say, "Do you want some tea? I'm not tired yet, and you look like you could use someone to talk to." Something in Vivian's expression softened. "Tea sounds perfect." They migrated to the kitchen, and Noah put the kettle on while Vivian settled at the table. It was past 10 now, later than Noah usually stayed up on a work night, but sleep felt impossible anyway. Too much adrenaline, too many thoughts circling. "Tell me about Emma," Vivian said as Noah set mugs on the table. "If you want to, you don't have to." Noah poured hot water over tea bags, watching the water darken. "What do you want to know?" "How you met, what she was like, why you loved her." Noah settled into the chair across from Vivian, hands wrapped around his mug. "We met in high school, sophomore year, biology class. She sat in front of me and turned around on the first day to borrow a pencil, and I was just gone, completely smitten." He smiled at the memory. "She was smart and funny and completely unimpressed by the fact that I was captain of the soccer team. Made me work for every conversation." "Sounds like she had good taste." "She had questionable taste in men, but I was lucky enough to benefit from it." Noah took a sip of tea. "We dated all through high school, went to prom together, talked about forever like teenagers do when they don't really understand what forever means. And then we actually tried to build it, got an apartment together when we started college, talked about getting married after graduation. But Lily came first. Yeah, Emma was terrified at first. We both were. 21 years old, barely able to pay rent, suddenly responsible for a whole human life. But she was amazing with Lily from day one. Natural mother, in a way I'm still not a natural father." Noah's voice roughened. "She would have loved seeing who Lily's becoming, would have been so proud." "What happened to her, if that's not too painful to talk about?" Noah had told this story enough times that he'd developed a practiced version, stripped of the raw edges that could still cut if he wasn't careful. Drunk driver, wrong place, wrong time. She was coming home from her parents' house. She'd reconciled with them after Lily was born, and some guy ran a red light at 60 miles an hour. She died at the scene. Never had a chance. "Noah, I'm so sorry." The worst part wasn't even losing her, as terrible as that was. The worst part was having to explain to a 2-year-old that mommy wasn't coming home, that she was gone and wasn't coming back. Noah set down his mug with careful precision. Lily was too young to really understand death. She kept asking when Mommy would be home, like Emma was just away on a trip. It took months before she stopped looking for her. They sat in silence, the weight of old grief filling the small kitchen. Vivian reached across the table and placed her hand over Noah's, the first real physical contact between them. Her skin was warm, her touch gentle. "Thank you for telling me," she said quietly. "I know that wasn't easy. Funny thing is, it gets a little easier every time. The sharp edges wear down. You never stop missing them, but you learn to live around the absence." Noah looked at their joined hands. "But you learn to be careful too. Learn to protect yourself from getting hurt like that again." "Is that why you're alone? Not just practically alone with Lily, but actually alone. No dating, no relationships." Noah pulled his hand back, not unkindly. "I tried dating once, about 2 years ago. Friend set me up with her cousin, nice woman, teacher at Lily's school. We went to dinner twice and she was perfectly pleasant, and I felt absolutely nothing. Just this hollow awareness that I was going through motions because it was what people expected. Maybe it was just the wrong person. Maybe. Or maybe I used up all my capacity for romantic love on Emma, and what's left is just devoted single fatherhood." Noah stood, taking his mug to the sink. "Either way, Lily's enough. She's more than enough." Vivian watched him with an expression that might have been understanding or might have been pity. Noah couldn't quite tell in the dim kitchen light. "That's a very noble way to live. Also a very lonely one," says the woman who's been married for 15 years. "You can be married and still be the loneliest person in the world," Vivian said softly. "Trust me on that." Noah turned to face her, leaning against the counter. "Fair point, though at least my loneliness is self-imposed. Safer that way." "Is it, though?" Vivian tilted her head, studying him. "Is being safe the same as being whole?" "Right now, for me, it has to be. I've got one job, Noah. Keep Lily safe and happy and whole. Everything else is secondary." "And what about keeping Noah safe and happy and whole?" "That's what the truck restoration is for." Noah gestured vaguely toward the shed behind the house. "Nights when I can't sleep, when the quiet gets too loud, I go out there and work on a '76 Chevy that's more rust than metal at this point. It's therapeutic." "Can I see it?" Vivian stood, moving toward him. "The truck, I mean." Noah checked the clock. It was nearly 11, well past any reasonable hour for shed tours. But something in Vivian's expression, genuine interest mixed with the need for distraction from her own situation, made him nod. "Come on, but fair warning, it's a mess out there." They crossed the dark yard, Noah leading the way with a flashlight, their breath misting in the cold air. The shed was more of a barn, really, a sagging structure that had come with the property and was probably older than Noah himself. He unlocked the door and flipped on the overhead work light, illuminating his ongoing restoration project. The truck sat on blocks in the center of the space, its primer gray body stripped of most non-essential parts. Tools hung on pegboards along the walls, and every surface was covered with components in various states of repair or replacement. "It's beautiful," Vivian said, and Noah could hear that she meant it. "It's a disaster," he corrected, but he was smiling. "I've been working on it for 4 years, and I'm maybe halfway done. At this rate, Lily will be in college before I get it running." Vivian moved around the truck, running her fingers along the body panels. "My father restored cars when I was growing up. Nothing this old, but the principle's the same. I used to sit in the garage with him for hours, just watching him work. Some of my best memories." "What happened to him?" "He died when I was 23. Heart attack, sudden and brutal. My mother followed 2 years later. Cancer." Vivian's voice was matter of fact, but Noah heard the grief underneath. "That's when I met Marcus, actually. I was grieving and lost and looking for something stable to hold on to. He seemed like the answer. But he wasn't. No, he was just another kind of loss." Vivian climbed up on the truck's running board, peering into the cab through the missing driver's side window. "Can I sit in it?" "Be my guest. Just watch out for the exposed springs in the seat." Vivian carefully maneuvered herself into the driver's seat, hands gripping the steering wheel that Noah had spent 3 weekends restoring to something approaching its original condition. In the harsh overhead light, she looked young despite the lines around her eyes, like someone playing at being carefree. "When's the last time you did something just for yourself?" Noah asked, leaning against the workbench. Not for Marcus, not for anyone else's expectations, just purely for you. Vivian was quiet for so long Noah thought she wasn't going to answer. I honestly can't remember, she said finally. Everything in my life for the past 15 years has been filtered through Marcus's approval. What I wore, where I went, who I saw, what I ate, all of it calculated to not cause problems, to not embarrass him, to not give him a reason to tighten the leash further. That's not living, that's just existing. I know, that's why I'm here. Vivian turned to look at him, still gripping the steering wheel. That's why I knocked on your door in the middle of a storm instead of calling Marcus's driver or one of his assistants. Because for once, just once, I wanted to make a choice that was purely my own. Consequences be damned. Noah moved closer to the truck, resting his hand on the door frame. And now? Now I'm sitting in a half-restored pickup truck in a stranger's shed at 11 o'clock at night, wearing borrowed clothes and planning to blow up my entire life on Monday morning. Vivian's laugh was slightly unhinged. And you know what? I feel more alive than I have in years. There was something electric in the air between them, a charge that Noah recognized as dangerous. Vivian was vulnerable, in crisis, seeking stability in all the wrong places. And Noah was lonely. So desperately lonely, despite all his noble talk about being enough for himself. It would be so easy to blur the lines here, to pretend this connection was something more than two damaged people finding temporary comfort in proximity. But Noah had Lily to think about, had his carefully constructed life to protect, had learned the hard way that temporary comfort could lead to permanent complications. You should get some rest, he said, stepping back from the truck. Monday's going to be a big day, and you need to be sharp for it. Vivian climbed out of the cab, and for a moment they stood close enough that Noah could smell the soap she'd used in his shower, could see the flecks of amber in her dark eyes. Then she nodded and moved past him toward the door. Thank you, Noah, she said. For the tea, for listening, for all of it. That's what friends do, Noah replied, emphasizing the word slightly. Drawing a boundary, establishing parameters. Vivian smiled, sad and knowing. Right, friends. They walked back to the house in silence, the November cold seeping through Noah's jacket. Inside, Vivian headed for the couch while Noah climbed the stairs, checking on Lily one more time before collapsing into his own bed. He lay there in the darkness, listening to the old house settle around him, and tried not to think about the woman sleeping downstairs, tried not to acknowledge the loneliness she'd identified in him, the hunger for connection he'd been denying for 6 years. 3 days, he reminded himself. Vivian would be gone in 3 days, and his life would return to its safe, predictable rhythm. He'd go back to landscaping and single fatherhood and quiet evenings in his shed, working on a truck that might never actually run. It was enough. It had to be enough. But as Noah finally drifted toward sleep, he couldn't quite convince himself that enough was the same as fulfilled. And that realization terrified him more than any billionaire husband ever could. Saturday morning arrived with weak winter sunlight filtering through Noah's bedroom window. He woke disoriented, having dreamed of Emma for the first time in months. Not the painful dreams of loss he'd had in the early years, but something gentler. She'd been sitting in the passenger seat of the restored truck, smiling at him, telling him it was okay to let someone else in. The dream logic had made perfect sense at the time, but now in the cold light of morning, it just felt like his subconscious working overtime on problems he didn't want to acknowledge. He could hear movement downstairs, the familiar sounds of his kitchen being occupied. For a disorienting moment, Noah's half-asleep brain supplied that it was Emma down there making coffee, that the past 6 years had been the dream, and he was waking back into the life they'd built together. Then reality crashed back. Emma was gone. And the woman in his kitchen was Vivian Laurent, who in 48 hours had somehow woven herself into the fabric of his carefully controlled existence in ways that made Noah deeply uncomfortable. When he came downstairs, he found Vivian and Lily at the kitchen table, Lily's art supplies spread between them. They were drawing together, Lily chattering away about her princess castle, while Vivian sketched something that looked remarkably professional even from across the room. Daddy, Lily looked up with paint-smudged cheeks. Vivian's teaching me how to draw horses, real ones, not just stick horses. I can see that. Noah moved to the coffee pot, which was already full and hot. You're up early. Couldn't sleep? Vivian didn't look up from her sketch. Old habit? Marcus always wanted breakfast at 6:30 sharp, even on weekends. My body still thinks that's the law. Noah poured coffee and settled at the table, watching Vivian's hands move across the paper with confident strokes. She was good, really good. The horse taking shape under her pencil had movement and life to it, muscles and energy captured in simple lines. "You studied photography," Noah said. "But you can draw like that?" "Photography is just drawing with light instead of pencil," Vivian replied, adding shading to the horse's flank. "My father taught me to sketch before he let me touch a camera. Said I needed to understand composition and form before I could capture it." Lily leaned over to study Vivian's work with serious concentration. "Can you teach me to draw Daddy so I can make him a picture?" Something shifted in Vivian's expression, a softness that made her look younger. "I'd love to, but your daddy might not sit still long enough to be a good model." "I have to work today," Noah said, more abruptly than he'd intended. "Emergency cleanup job. Tree blocking a client's driveway." "On Saturday?" Vivian's eyes met his, and he saw understanding there. She knew he was using work as an excuse to put distance between them, to escape the growing intimacy of their situation. "Bills don't care what day it is." Noah stood, downing the rest of his coffee. "Mrs. Chen's coming at 8 to take Lily to her dance class. You'll be okay here alone for a few hours?" "We'll be fine," Vivian said quietly. "Won't we, Lily?" Lily nodded enthusiastically, already focused back on her own drawing. Noah fled upstairs to get ready for work, frustrated with himself for being a coward, for running from something he couldn't even properly name. The cleanup job took longer than expected. The fallen branch had damaged part of the client's fence, and they asked Noah if he could handle that repair too. He said yes because he always said yes, because turning down work felt like tempting fate. By the time he finished and collected payment, it was past 3 in the afternoon and he was exhausted, muscles aching from hauling wood and wrestling with fence posts. When he pulled into his driveway, he found Vivian sitting on the porch steps with her phone, her expression tight with stress. She looked up as Noah climbed out of the truck, and he could see she'd been crying. "What happened?" Noah crossed the yard in quick strides. "Is Lily okay?" "Lily's fine. Mrs. Chen dropped her off an hour ago. She's inside watching a movie." Vivian held up her phone like evidence of a crime. "I got a text from my sister. Marcus knows I'm gone." Noah felt his stomach drop. "How?" "My car was towed from where it broke down. The police ran the plates, and it flagged in Marcus's tracking system. He called my phone 20 times this morning, left voicemails." Vivian's hands were shaking. "He's furious, not worried, not concerned, just angry that I left without permission, that I disrupted his carefully controlled world." "Did you listen to the voicemails?" 3 of them. That was enough." Vivian stood, pacing the porch. He started with the concerned husband routine. "Darling, where are you? I'm worried about you." But by the 3rd message, the mask slipped. He threatened to have me declared mentally incompetent, to freeze all our accounts, to make sure I had nothing and no one if I didn't come home immediately. Noah moved closer, positioning himself between Vivian and the driveway as if Marcus might materialize there at any moment. "What did you do?" "I called my sister back, told her I was safe and not to worry. Then I called the divorce attorney I was supposed to see Monday and begged for an emergency appointment." Vivian wrapped her arms around herself. "She can see me tomorrow afternoon, Sunday. I'm going to file on Monday morning, first thing." "That's good. That's the plan, right? Get legal protection in place before Marcus destroys me? Yes." Vivian's laugh was sharp with panic. "But I'm terrified, Noah. You have no idea what he's capable of when someone challenges him. He doesn't just win, he obliterates. There are stories about business rivals who crossed him, journalists who wrote unflattering pieces. They didn't just lose, they lost everything." Noah thought about the man he'd read about in business magazines, the tech genius with the cold eyes and the reputation for ruthlessness. "He's not going to obliterate you. You have rights, legal protections. You think that matters to someone like Marcus?" Vivian turned on him with sudden intensity. "He has lawyers on retainer whose only job is to find loopholes and destroy opposition. He has connections at every level of government, law enforcement, media. He can make me disappear from my own life without anyone even noticing." "Then why are you doing this?" Noah asked. "If he's that powerful, if the risk is that high, why not just what? Stay? Go back to being his beautifully controlled wife?" His perfect accessory? Vivian's eyes blazed. Because I'd rather die free than live another day in that prison. And yes, I know how dramatic that sounds, but I mean it literally. I've thought about it, Noah. About driving off a bridge or taking pills or just disappearing into the ocean. That's how desperate I've been. The raw honesty of it hit Noah like a physical blow. He'd known Vivian was unhappy, trapped, but hearing her talk about suicide so matter-of-factly made everything suddenly, viscerally real. You can't think like that, he said, reaching for her without thinking, hands gripping her shoulders. You can't let him win by destroying yourself. I'm not going to. Vivian's voice steadied, steel replacing panic. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm fighting. But I need you to understand, this is going to get ugly. Marcus is going to come after me with everything he has, and anyone connected to me could become collateral damage. Noah understood what she was really saying. This was his out, his chance to step back, to protect Lily and himself from the coming storm. Any rational person would take it. Okay, he said instead. Then we make sure you're protected. Tomorrow, you see the attorney. Get the divorce filed Monday morning with whatever restraining orders or legal protection she recommends. In the meantime, you stay here where Marcus doesn't know to look. Noah, you're not listening, Jai. No, you're not listening. Noah dropped his hands from her shoulders but held her gaze. I don't know anything about billionaire divorces or corporate warfare, but I know something about fighting for what matters. And right now, what matters is making sure you get out of this alive and whole. So we figure it out together. Vivian stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. Why? Why would you risk this for someone you barely know? Noah thought about Emma, about the random cruelty of drunk drivers and red lights, about how the universe could take everything from you in seconds for no reason at all, about Lily sleeping peacefully while her mother died on a rain-slick road, about all the ways life could destroy you without warning or mercy. Because someone should have helped Emma, he said quietly. The night she died, she was driving home alone in a storm. If someone had offered her a place to stay, told her to wait until the weather cleared, maybe she'd still be alive. But nobody did. And I've spent 6 years wishing I could go back and change that single variable, that one moment that cost us everything. Vivian's eyes filled with tears. Noah, that's not... You can't save me to make up for losing her. I'm not trying to save you. I'm trying to help you save yourself. Noah shoved his hands in his pockets. There's a difference. Before Vivian could respond, the front door banged open and Lily appeared, still in her dance clothes. Daddy, you're home. Can we have pizza for dinner? Vivian said we could if you said yes. The moment broke, reality reasserting itself in the form of a 6-year-old with excellent timing. Noah managed to smile. Pizza sounds perfect, Firefly. That evening, they ordered from Lily's favorite place and ate around the kitchen table like they were a normal family instead of a single father, his daughter, and a billionaire's runaway wife hiding from the inevitable confrontation. Lily dominated the conversation, telling elaborate stories about her dance class and her friend Sophie, who could do a backflip, and her teacher Miss Andrea, who had hair all the way down to her waist. Vivian listened with genuine interest, asking questions and laughing at Lily's dramatic retellings. Noah watched the two of them interact and felt something dangerous blooming in his chest, the beginning of hope that this could be more than temporary, that maybe the universe was offering him a second chance at something like family. He crushed that hope immediately. This wasn't a romance. This was crisis management. Vivian needed help escaping a bad situation, and Noah was providing temporary shelter. Nothing more. After dinner, while Noah cleaned up the kitchen, Vivian took Lily outside to look at stars. Through the window, he could see them in the yard, Lily pointing at constellations she half remembered from a library book while Vivian nodded along. The temperature had dropped below freezing, and their breath misted in the air like speech bubbles in a comic. They looked right together, Noah thought, then immediately felt guilty for thinking it. Lily had a mother, would always have a mother, even if Emma was gone. Letting himself imagine Vivian filling that role was a betrayal of Emma's memory and unfair to Vivian, who was dealing with her own crisis and didn't need Noah projecting fantasies onto her. When they came back inside, Lily's cheeks were pink with cold and her eyes were bright with excitement. Vivian knows all the constellations, even the hard ones like Cassiopeia. My father taught me, Vivian said, helping Lily out of her jacket. He said everyone should know how to navigate by stars, just in case. In case what? Lily asked. In case you get lost and need to find your way home. Lily considered this seriously. Are you lost, Vivian? The question hung in the air, innocent and devastating. Vivian crouched down to Lily's eye level, her expression gentle. I was lost for a very long time, but I think I'm finding my way now. Good. Lily threw her arms around Vivian's neck in an impulsive hug. I'm glad you found Daddy's house. It's a good place for finding your way. Noah saw Vivian's eyes close, saw her arms come up to hold Lily carefully, like she was something precious and fragile. When they pulled apart, Vivian was crying silently, and Lily looked worried. Did I make you sad? No, sweetheart. You made me the opposite of sad. Vivian wiped at her tears. These are happy tears. Sometimes people cry when they're happy. That's silly, Lily pronounced, but she was smiling. Daddy cries sometimes too. I hear him at night when he thinks I'm sleeping. Noah felt his chest constrict. He thought he'd been so careful, so quiet in his grief. But of course, Lily knew. Children always knew more than adults gave them credit for. Everybody cries sometimes, Noah said, his voice rough. It's how we let out feelings that are too big to hold inside. Like when you miss Mommy? Lily asked. Yeah, Firefly. Exactly like that. Lily seemed satisfied with this answer and headed upstairs to get ready for bed. Vivian stood slowly, still wiping at tears. She's extraordinary, Vivian said. You've raised an extraordinary little girl, Noah. I've done my best. Most days I feel like I'm barely keeping ahead of all the ways I could screw her up. You're doing better than barely. Vivian moved closer, her voice dropping. She feels safe with you, loved, that's everything. The moment stretched between them, loaded with things neither could say. Noah broke it by clearing his throat and stepping back. I should get her to bed. You must be exhausted too. Actually, I was wondering... Vivian hesitated. Could I see the truck again? I know it's late, but I'm too wired to sleep and I thought maybe... Yeah. Noah didn't let her finish. Yeah, come on. They left Lily to her bedtime routine and walked across the dark yard to the shed. Noah flipped on the work light, and the truck materialized from shadow, still primer gray and incomplete, but somehow beautiful in its honest brokenness. Vivian moved around it slowly, running her hands over the body panels. Can I help? Help with what? The restoration. I told you my father taught me about cars. I'm not an expert, but I can follow instructions, hand you tools, hold things steady while you work. Vivian met his eyes over the truck's hood. I need to do something with my hands, Noah. Need to feel useful instead of just terrified and waiting. Noah wanted to say no. Wanted to maintain this as his space, his refuge, the one place where he could escape into simple mechanical problems instead of complicated human ones. But he looked at Vivian and saw someone drowning, desperately reaching for anything solid to hold on to. Okay, he said. I was going to work on the brake system tonight. It's tedious, but if you're willing to help, it'll go faster. They worked in comfortable silence, Noah explaining what he was doing while Vivian held flashlights and handed him wrenches. She asked intelligent questions, remembered which tool was which after being told once, and didn't flinch when her borrowed clothes got dirty with grease and brake fluid. Marcus would lose his mind if he could see me right now, Vivian said at one point, elbow deep in the truck's wheel well. His wife, filthy and happy, working on a junker truck in a shed in the middle of nowhere. It's not a junker, Noah protested. It's a classic undergoing restoration. It's a beautiful junker. Vivian's smile was genuine, unguarded. And I love it. They worked until nearly midnight, making real progress on the brake system. When Noah finally called it quits, Vivian's hair was coming loose from its ponytail, and there was a smudge of grease on her cheek that made her look younger, more real than the polished woman who'd knocked on his door 2 nights ago. Thank you, she said as they walked back to the house, for letting me help, for giving me something to focus on besides my own fear. You're good company in a shed, Noah replied, even if you did call my truck a junker. Vivian laughed, the sound carrying across the cold yard. Inside, the house was quiet, Lily long since asleep. They stood in the kitchen, suddenly awkward now that the distraction of work was gone. Big day tomorrow, Noah said. You're meeting with the attorney. Yeah. Vivian's anxiety came rushing back, visible in the tightening of her shoulders. What if she says I don't have a case? What if Marcus has somehow protected himself legally so well that there's no way out? Then you find another attorney, another approach. You don't give up. Easy to say when it's not your life being dismantled. True. Noah moved to the sink, washing grease from his hands. But you're the one who knocked on a stranger's door in a storm instead of calling Marcus's driver. You're the one who's been planning this escape for however long. You've got more fight in you than you're giving yourself credit for. Vivian joined him at the sink, washing her own hands. They stood shoulder to shoulder in the small space, and Noah was hyper-aware of her proximity, of the smell of her shampoo mixing with brake fluid and autumn air. What happened to keeping your distance? Vivian asked softly. Last night in the shed, you made it very clear we were just friends. Nothing more. Oh, we are just friends. Are we? Vivian turned to face him, water still dripping from her hands. Because this doesn't feel like just friendship, Noah. This feels like something else entirely. Noah knew he should step back, should reinforce the boundaries he'd drawn, but he was tired of being careful, tired of protecting himself from every possible hurt. And Vivian was looking at him like he mattered, like he was more than just convenient shelter. I don't know what this is, he admitted. All I know is you showed up, and suddenly my carefully controlled life doesn't feel quite so controlled anymore. Is that a bad thing? I don't know that either. Noah dried his hands on a towel, needing something to do with them besides reach for Vivian. What I do know is you're going through a divorce, running from a dangerous man, and in no position to make decisions about what comes next. And I'm a single father who hasn't let anyone close in 6 years because it's safer that way. So whatever this is, it's probably a terrible idea. Probably, Vivian agreed, but she didn't move away. They stood there in Noah's kitchen at midnight, the whole house quiet around them except for the refrigerator's hum and the wind outside. Noah could see Vivian's pulse beating in her throat, could feel his own heart hammering against his ribs. I should go to bed, Vivian said, but she didn't move. Yeah, Noah agreed, also not moving. The moment stretched impossibly thin, ready to snap into something neither could take back. Then, from upstairs, they heard Lily call out in her sleep. A small sound, barely audible, but enough to break the spell. Noah stepped back first. I need to check on her. Of course. Vivian's voice was steady, but her eyes held disappointment. Good night, Noah. Good night. Noah climbed the stairs on autopilot, checking on Lily, who was fine, just talking in her sleep about penguins and dance class. He stood in her doorway for a long time, watching her sleep, reminding himself why caution mattered. Why protecting this small person came before everything else, including his own loneliness. When he finally made it to his own room, he could hear Vivian moving around downstairs, settling on the couch. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. Tomorrow, Vivian would meet with the divorce attorney. Monday, she'd file papers that would officially declare war on one of the most powerful men on the West Coast. And Noah would have to decide how involved he was willing to get in a battle that could destroy everything he'd built. The smart thing would be to step back, to help Vivian find a hotel or a friend's place, to wish her well and return to his safe, predictable life. But Noah had spent 6 years playing it safe, and safety had started to feel like another word for slowly dying. Vivian had crashed into his life like that drunk driver crashed into Emma, sudden, unexpected, changing everything in an instant. The difference was, this time Noah had a choice about what came next. He just wasn't sure he was brave enough to make the right one. Sunday morning brought rain, the kind of steady northwest drizzle that could last for days. Noah woke to find Vivian already up, dressed in clothes she'd apparently retrieved from her abandoned car at some point, dark slacks and a cream-colored sweater that looked expensive even to Noah's untrained eye. She'd pulled her hair back into a sleek bun and applied makeup with precision. She looked every inch the billionaire's wife again, polished and intimidating. You look ready for battle, Noah said, pouring coffee. That's the idea. Vivian's hands were shaking slightly as she accepted the mug. The attorney said to dress like I belong in Marcus's world, to project confidence and stability. No visible cracks. When's your appointment? 3 o'clock. Her office is in downtown Portland. Vivian glanced out the window at the rain. I called a rideshare. Didn't want to risk using my car. Marcus is probably tracking it. Noah nodded, understanding the paranoia even if it seemed excessive. You want company? I could drive you. Wait outside. No. Vivian cut him off quickly. I need to do this alone. And the less connection there is between you and me in any official capacity, the safer you and Lily are. Vivian, I mean it, Noah. Marcus's investigators are probably already trying to figure out where I've been the past few days. The rideshare will drop me off at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the attorney's office. I'll walk the rest. No paper trail leading back here. The level of precaution should have seemed paranoid, but Noah remembered Vivian's stories about Marcus tracking her phone, monitoring her movements, controlling every aspect of her life. If anything, she was probably being too trusting, thinking a simple rideshare wouldn't be traceable. Lily wandered downstairs in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Why is Vivian so fancy? She has an important meeting, Noah explained. Like when you had to dress up for your school pictures. Lily studied Vivian critically. You look like a princess, but a serious princess, like one who has to fight dragons. Vivian's smile was strained. That's exactly what I feel like, sweetheart. The morning passed with agonizing slowness. Vivian grew more tense as 3 o'clock approached, pacing Noah's small living room like a caged animal. Noah tried to distract her with conversation, with offers of food she couldn't eat, but nothing helped. By the time her rideshare pulled up at 2:30, Vivian looked ready to shatter. Hey! Noah caught her arm as she headed for the door. You've got this. You're stronger than you think. Vivian looked at him with eyes full of terror and determination. If something happens, if this goes wrong and Marcus finds out where I've been, nothing's going to happen. But if it does, I need you to know, these past few days, they've meant everything. You and Lily, this house, feeling human again instead of just decorative. I needed this more than you'll ever know. Before Noah could respond, Vivian stretched up and kissed his cheek, quick and chaste but loaded with meaning. Then she was out the door and into the waiting car, gone before Noah could process what had just happened. He stood on the porch watching the car disappear down his gravel drive, one hand pressed to his cheek where he could still feel the ghost of Vivian's lips. Behind him, Lily appeared in the doorway. Is Vivian coming back? She asked in a small voice. Yeah, Firefly. She's coming back. Noah hoped he wasn't lying. The afternoon crawled past with excruciating slowness. Noah tried to distract himself with chores, with playing with Lily, with anything that would keep his mind from spiraling into worst-case scenarios. But he kept checking his phone, kept watching the clock, kept wondering what was happening in that downtown attorney's office. 5 o'clock came and went, then 6. By 7, Noah was actively fighting panic, trying not to let Lily see how worried he was. He heated up leftovers for dinner, helped Lily with a puzzle, read her 3 stories before bed. Through it all, his mind was screaming that something had gone wrong, that Marcus had somehow found out, that Vivian was in danger. At 8:30, headlights finally swept across Noah's windows. He was at the door before the car even stopped, relief flooding through him as Vivian climbed out of the rideshare. But his relief died when he saw her face. She looked destroyed, makeup streaked with tears, eyes red and swollen, hands trembling as she walked toward the house. What happened? Noah pulled her inside, already reaching for his phone. Do we need to call the police? Did Marcus— No. Vivian's voice was hoarse from crying. Marcus doesn't know anything yet. But Noah, it's worse than I thought. So much worse. Noah guided Vivian to the couch, his hand steady on her back, even as his own pulse hammered with dread. She collapsed onto the cushions like her legs had simply given out, and he'd never seen anyone look so utterly defeated. He sat beside her, close but not touching, waiting for her to find words through whatever devastation she'd endured in that attorney's office. The prenup, Vivian finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I signed a prenuptial agreement when I married Marcus. I was young and stupid and in love, and I didn't read it carefully. My parents were already gone, and I had no one to tell me what I was really signing. Noah's stomach tightened. What did it say? Everything. In the event of divorce, I get nothing unless Marcus is proven to have committed adultery or physical abuse. And even then, the maximum I can receive is $200,000. After 15 years of marriage, Vivian's laugh was broken, jagged. The attorney, her name is Rebecca Chen, and she's supposed to be the best in the state, She looked at me like I was the most naive person she'd ever met, and she's probably right. 200,000 is still something, Noah said, trying to find a bright side. It's enough to start over to, that's if I can prove abuse. Physical abuse, specifically. Emotional abuse, financial control, tracking my every movement. None of that counts under the terms I agreed to. Vivian turned to face him, and Noah saw fury beginning to burn through the despair. And Marcus made sure there's no evidence of physical abuse because he never touched me. He didn't need to. He controlled me completely without ever raising a hand. Noah thought about his own financial struggles, about how $200,000 would change his life completely, would pay off his medical debt, fix his truck, give Lily a real college fund. But he also understood that for Vivian, it represented something much darker, proof that she'd been trapped from the very beginning, that Marcus had planned for her eventual rebellion and made sure it would cost her everything. What else did the attorney say? That Marcus has been building a case against me for years. Rebecca had one of her investigators do a preliminary search, and there are medical records I never knew existed, reports from doctors I never saw, claiming I have a history of mental instability, depression, anxiety disorders. Marcus has been creating a paper trail that makes me look unstable. That's fraud. Medical records can't just be fabricated. They can when you own a company worth billions and have connections at every major hospital in the state. Vivian's hands clenched into fists. Rebecca says it's sophisticated, almost impossible to disprove without extensive investigation that could take years and cost hundreds of thousands in legal fees. Money I don't have unless I can prove abuse, which I can't do because there's no evidence. Noah felt rage building in his chest, hot and unfamiliar. He'd spent 6 years carefully avoiding anger, channeling everything into being steady for Lily, but hearing about Marcus's systematic destruction of Vivian's autonomy made him want to put his fist through a wall. So what's the plan? He asked, keeping his voice level. Rebecca wouldn't have taken you as a client if she thought it was hopeless. She's going to file the divorce petition tomorrow morning with a request for temporary support and a restraining order based on emotional abuse and controlling behavior. She says it's a long shot, but if we can get the right judge, someone who understands how financial abuse works, we might be able to establish a pattern of behavior that violates the spirit of the prenup, even if not the letter. Okay, that's something. It's a gamble with almost no chance of success. Vivian wiped at her eyes with the heels of her hands. And the moment those papers are filed, Marcus is going to come after me with everything he has. Rebecca was very clear about that. He'll freeze any accounts I have access to. He'll use those fabricated medical records to try to have me declared incompetent. He'll drag my name through every newspaper and gossip site until I'm nothing but a cautionary tale about gold diggers who tried to take down powerful men. Let him try. Noah surprised himself with the vehemence in his voice. Let him throw his money around and hire his fancy lawyers. You've got truth on your side. Truth doesn't matter when the other side can afford to bury it under mountains of legal maneuvering. Vivian stood abruptly, pacing the small living room. Rebecca estimates it could take 2 to 3 years to get through the divorce proceedings. 2 to 3 years of Marcus systematically destroying every aspect of my life, of investigators following me, of legal battles I can barely afford. And at the end of it all, I might walk away with nothing but debt and a ruined reputation. Noah watched her pace, seeing the woman who'd knocked on his door 4 days ago, desperate, terrified, but still fighting. So what do you want to do? Vivian stopped moving, turning to face him with something wild in her eyes. There's another option. Rebecca mentioned it almost as a joke, but the more I think about it, the more sense it makes. What option? I could accept Marcus's settlement offer. He texted me today, 20 messages while I was in Rebecca's office. Started with threats, moved to bargaining. He's offering me $5 million to come home quietly, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and never speak publicly about our marriage. $5 million to disappear back into the prison I escaped from. The number hit Noah like a physical blow. $5 million. More money than he'd earn in 10 lifetimes of landscaping work. Enough to solve every problem Vivian could possibly have. Enough to set her up for the rest of her life. You can't be seriously considering that, he said. Why not? $5 million buys a lot of freedom. I could take the money, disappear, start over somewhere Marcus would never find me. Change my name, move to another country, finally live the life I want. Except you'd be living it in hiding, always looking over your shoulder, always afraid he'd find you and make you pay for leaving. Noah moved closer to her. And you'd have to live with the knowledge that you let him win. That money isn't a settlement, it's hush money. He's buying your silence about what he did to you. So what? Vivian's voice cracked. Why does it matter if I'm silent if I'm free? Because you're not free if you're hiding. You're just in a different kind of prison, one you built yourself out of fear. Noah reached for her hands, gripping them tightly. You told me you'd rather die free than live another day as his prisoner. Did you mean that? Tears streamed down Vivian's face, but she didn't pull away. I meant it. But I'm so scared, Noah. I'm terrified of what he's going to do to me. Then we fight. Together. You file those papers tomorrow, get that restraining order, and start building your case. And when Marcus comes after you, because he will, you don't face him alone. I can't ask you to do that. This isn't your fight. You're not asking. I'm offering. Noah pulled her closer, his voice steady, even though his heart was racing. I told you before, I couldn't save Emma, but I can help you save yourself, so that's what we're going to do. Vivian collapsed against him, her face buried in his shoulder as she sobbed. Noah held her, feeling her shake with the force of fear and relief and exhaustion. He thought about Lily sleeping upstairs, about the safe life he'd built for her, about all the ways this decision could blow up in his face. But he also thought about Emma, about the woman she'd been, fierce and kind and incapable of walking past someone who needed help. She would have done exactly this, would have opened their home and their lives to someone running from danger. Consequences be damned. Thank you, Vivian whispered against his shoulder. Thank you for not telling me I'm crazy for fighting this. You're not crazy, you're brave. Noah pulled back just enough to see her face. Now go wash up and try to sleep. Tomorrow's going to be hard, and you need to be ready. Vivian nodded, wiping at her eyes. She headed for the bathroom, and Noah heard the water run for a long time before she emerged, scrubbed clean of makeup and tears. She changed into his sweatpants and t-shirt again, and she looked younger without all the armor she'd worn to the attorney's office. I'm sorry, she said, hovering in the bathroom doorway, for falling apart like that, for dragging you into my mess. You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose to open that door, remember? Noah stood from the couch. Get some sleep, Vivian. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. But sleep proved impossible for either of them. Noah lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing through everything that could go wrong. Vivian filed for divorce tomorrow morning. Marcus would be served with papers. And then all hell would break loose. Around 2 a.m, Noah gave up on sleep and headed downstairs to make tea. He found Vivian already in the kitchen, standing at the window and staring out at the dark yard. Couldn't sleep either? He asked. Every time I close my eyes, I see Marcus's face when he realizes I'm really leaving, when he understands I'm not coming back. Vivian turned from the window. He's going to be so angry, Noah. You have no idea what he's like when someone defies him. Then tell me. Help me understand what we're up against. Vivian settled at the kitchen table while Noah made tea, and when he sat across from her, she began to talk. Really talk, in ways she hadn't before. She told him about the first time Marcus had tracked her phone without permission, explaining it away as concern for her safety, about how he'd slowly isolated her from friends, always with reasonable explanations. They were using her for access to his money. They were jealous of their happiness. They weren't sophisticated enough to understand their lifestyle. She described the financial control, how every credit card was monitored, every purchase questioned, how Marcus had access to all her accounts, but she had none to his. How he'd convinced her to stop working as a photographer because it was beneath her station as his wife, then used her unemployment as evidence that she couldn't take care of herself. It happened so gradually, Vivian said, hands wrapped around her tea mug. By the time I realized I was trapped, I'd been trained to doubt my own judgment about everything. Marcus would tell me I was remembering conversations wrong, that I'd agreed to things I had no memory of agreeing to. He'd show me emails I supposedly sent, but never remembered writing. After a while, I started to believe maybe I was unstable. Maybe I did need him to manage my life. That's called gaslighting, Noah said quietly. Psychological abuse designed to make you question your own sanity. I know that now. Rebecca spelled it out very clearly. But knowing it intellectually and believing it emotionally are two different things. Vivian met his eyes across the table. Part of me still wonders if Marcus is right, if I'm making a huge mistake, if I'm too damaged to function without someone controlling me. You're not damaged. You're recovering from 15 years of systematic abuse. Noah reached across the table, covering her hand with his. And you're stronger than he ever gave you credit for, or you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be fighting. I'm only fighting because of you. Vivian turned her hand over, interlacing their fingers. Because you showed me what normal looks like. A normal person living a normal life, being kind without wanting anything in return. I'd forgotten that existed. They sat in silence for a while, hands linked across the table, the night deep and quiet around them. Noah knew he should pull away, should maintain the boundaries he'd tried to establish. But Vivian's hand in his felt like an anchor, like the only real thing in a world that had gone strange and dangerous. What happens if he finds out I've been here? Noah asked. If his investigators track you to this house? I've been thinking about that. Vivian's grip tightened. Rebecca asked me today where I'd been staying, and I lied. Told her I had a friend in Beaverton who'd taken me in. She believed me, or at least didn't push. As long as I'm careful about paper trails, there's no reason for anyone to connect you to me. Except the rideshare companies. Those have records. I've been using a prepaid phone I bought with cash from a convenience store. The account isn't in my name, and I've been careful to get dropped off blocks away from where I'm actually going. Vivian smiled slightly. I've learned a few things about covering my tracks over the years. Marcus taught me well, even if he didn't mean to. Noah thought about the level of paranoia required to live like that, constantly covering tracks and creating false trails. It should have seemed excessive, but Vivian's fear was so palpable, so bone deep, that he believed every precaution was necessary. Okay, he said, but if anything happens, if you think Marcus is getting close to finding you here, you tell me immediately. Lily's safety comes first. I know. I would never put her at risk. Vivian's eyes filled with tears again. She's such a sweet kid, Noah. You're so lucky to have her. I know I am. Noah thought about Lily sleeping upstairs, blissfully unaware of the chaos brewing in their lives. Sometimes I look at her and can't believe Emma and I created something so perfect. And then I panic because I'm responsible for not screwing her up, and the weight of that is crushing. You're not going to screw her up. She's happy, secure, loved. That's everything a kid needs. Is it, though? She doesn't have a mother. Doesn't have the complete family other kids have. Sometimes I worry that my being enough for her isn't actually enough. Vivian studied him with an expression Noah couldn't quite read. Can I ask you something? And you can tell me to mind my own business if you want. Okay. Why haven't you dated since Emma died? You're a good man, a great father, reasonably attractive. She smiled slightly at his surprised expression. You could have found someone if you wanted to, so why haven't you? Noah was quiet for a long moment, trying to articulate something he'd never quite put into words before. Because loving someone means giving them the power to destroy you. I gave Emma that power, and when she died, she took a part of me with her. Not intentionally, not cruelly, but just by being everything to me and then being gone. He met Vivian's eyes. I can't give anyone that power again. Can't risk Lily losing another person she loves. Can't risk myself being broken like that again. So I just don't. That's surviving, not living. Maybe, but surviving is what I do best these days. Noah pulled his hand back, suddenly needing distance. Besides, this isn't about me. We're supposed to be figuring out how to get you through tomorrow. Vivian let the subject drop, but Noah could feel her watching him with that same unreadable expression. They talked for another hour, planning logistics for the morning, discussing what Vivian should say if Marcus called, strategizing about the restraining order Rebecca would be filing. Finally, as dawn began to lighten the kitchen windows, they both admitted defeat on the idea of sleep. Noah made breakfast while Vivian showered and changed back into her expensive clothes, transforming once again into the polished woman who looked like she belonged in boardrooms and country clubs. Lily came downstairs to find them at the table, and if she noticed the tension in the air, she didn't comment on it. She chattered through breakfast about a project at school, about how her friend Emma, named after Noah's Emma, which still made his chest tight, was having a birthday party next week. Can I go, Daddy, please? Everyone's going, and there's going to be a bounce house and face painting, and we'll see, Firefly. Noah's automatic response when he needed to think about whether he could afford something. "We'll see" means no, Lily pronounced sadly. "We'll see" means I need to check my schedule, Noah corrected gently, "but I'll do my best to make it work." After breakfast, Noah left for work while Vivian stayed behind with Lily, waiting for Mrs. Chen to arrive. He'd taken the day's jobs knowing he couldn't really afford to focus, but also knowing he couldn't afford to skip them. Bills didn't care about billionaire divorces or moral dilemmas. He was trimming hedges at a client's house in Lake Oswego when his phone rang. Unknown number. Noah almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Is this Noah Bennett?" A woman's voice, professional and clipped. "Speaking." "Mr. Bennett, my name is Rebecca Chen. I'm representing Vivian Laurent in her divorce proceedings. She listed you as an emergency contact, and I need to speak with you about a development in her case." Noah's stomach dropped. "What kind of development?" "I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Can you meet me at my office this afternoon, say 3 o'clock? "I'm working until 5. This is urgent, Mr. Bennett. I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't." Rebecca's voice softened slightly. "Please, it's about Vivian's safety." Noah told his client he had a family emergency and left the job half-finished, something he'd never done in 6 years of landscaping. He drove to Rebecca Chen's office in downtown Portland with his heart hammering, mind racing through every terrible possibility. The law office was in one of those glass towers that made Noah feel immediately out of place in his work clothes and dirt-stained boots. But the receptionist directed him to Rebecca's office without comment, and when he entered, he found a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes studying him with obvious assessment. "Mr. Bennett, thank you for coming on short notice." Rebecca gestured to a chair across from her massive desk. "I'll get straight to the point. This morning, we filed Vivian's divorce petition and request for a restraining order. Marcus Laurent was served papers at 11:30 at his office." "Okay." Noah sat on the edge of the chair. Vivian said that was the plan. What wasn't part of the plan was Marcus's immediate response. Rebecca pulled up something on her computer screen, turning it so Noah could see. "He held an impromptu press conference an hour ago. Would you like to see it?" Noah's blood ran cold, but he nodded. Rebecca hit play, and Marcus Laurent's face filled the screen. He was handsome in that polished way wealthy men often were. Salt and pepper hair, expensive suit, concerned expression that looked almost genuine. "I'm speaking to you today with a heavy heart," Marcus began, his voice carrying just the right amount of emotion. "My wife, Vivian, has been struggling with mental health issues for several years now. I've tried to get her the help she needs, but she's refused treatment, and now she's done something that forces me to speak publicly about what should be a private family matter." Noah felt sick watching Marcus perform concern while systematically destroying Vivian's credibility. "Vivian has filed for divorce, which is her right, and I wish her nothing but healing and happiness," Marcus continued. "But the accusations she's making through her attorney, claims of abuse and control, these are symptoms of her illness, not reflections of reality. I have documentation from multiple medical professionals confirming her struggles with paranoid delusions and persecution complex. I only hope that through this difficult process, she can finally get the psychiatric help she so desperately needs." The video ended, and Rebecca closed the browser window. It's already been picked up by every major news outlet in the state. By morning, it'll be national news. Tech billionaire's mentally ill wife tries to extort him through false abuse claims. It's catnip for the media. Noah couldn't speak. He thought about Vivian watching this, seeing herself portrayed as unstable and delusional on television, knowing millions of people were hearing Marcus's version of events. "There's more," Rebecca said grimly. "Marcus has filed an emergency petition to have Vivian undergo a psychiatric evaluation. He's claiming she's a danger to herself and possibly others due to her deteriorating mental state. If he succeeds, she could be involuntarily committed for up to 72 hours. That's insane. She's not mentally ill. I know that. You know that. But Marcus has those fabricated medical records I told Vivian about, plus statements from people he's paid to claim they've witnessed her erratic behavior." Rebecca leaned back in her chair. "And now he's weaponizing the fact that Vivian has been staying somewhere unknown for the past 5 days. He's painting it as evidence of a psychotic break, leaving her home in the middle of the night, disappearing without telling anyone where she was going, refusing to answer his calls." Noah thought about Vivian in his cottage, helping Lily with homework, making soup, working on the truck. Nothing about her behavior suggested mental illness. She was stressed, scared, but entirely rational. "So what do we do?" he asked. "That depends on you." Rebecca studied him carefully. "Vivian told me she's been staying with a friend in Beaverton, but I don't believe her. And based on the fact that she listed you as her emergency contact, something she only told me about this morning, I'm guessing she's actually been staying with you." Noah didn't confirm or deny, just held Rebecca's gaze. "Here's the situation," Rebecca continued. "If Vivian has been staying with you, you could be called as a witness, asked to testify about her mental state, her behavior over the past several days. That testimony could be crucial in fighting Marcus's petition to have her committed." "I'll testify," Noah said immediately. "I'll tell them exactly what I've seen, that she's completely rational, just scared of an abusive husband." "It's not that simple. If you testify that Vivian has been staying with you, Marcus's attorneys will tear apart your credibility. They'll ask about your relationship with her, imply that you're romantically involved, suggest you're helping her fabricate abuse claims because you're sleeping with her." Noah felt heat rise in his face. There's nothing like that happening." "I believe you, but it doesn't matter what's true. It matters what Marcus can make a jury believe." Rebecca's voice was gentle but firm. "You're a single father, younger than Vivian, living alone in a cottage outside Portland. She's a wealthy older woman fleeing her marriage. Marcus will paint you as an opportunist who saw a chance to extort money from a vulnerable woman by encouraging her paranoid delusions about her husband. That's ridiculous. That's effective." Rebecca stood, moving to the window that overlooked downtown Portland. "I need you to understand what you're walking into if you agree to help Vivian publicly. Marcus Laurent destroys people for sport. He has unlimited resources and no moral boundaries. If he decides you're a threat, he will come after you with everything he has." Noah thought about Lily, about their quiet life, about all the ways Marcus could make things difficult for them. Legal harassment, professional sabotage, public humiliation. Men like Marcus Laurent didn't just win, they obliterated. But he also thought about Vivian's face when she talked about wanting to die rather than go back to her marriage. About her hands shaking as she described 15 years of systematic psychological torture. About the woman who'd knocked on his door in a storm and somehow, impossibly, made him feel alive again for the first time in 6 years. "I'll testify," Noah said. "Whatever it takes to help Vivian, I'll do it." Rebecca turned from the window, studying him with something that might have been respect. "You understand this could destroy your life?" "My life's been on hold for 6 years. Maybe it's time I started living it again. Consequences be damned." "All right then." Rebecca returned to her desk, pulling up a document on her computer. "I'll need a formal statement from you describing Vivian's behavior while she's been staying with you. Be specific, be honest, and don't exaggerate. Just describe what you've observed." Noah spent the next hour giving his statement, describing everything from Vivian's arrival to her interactions with Lily to the work they'd done together in his shed. Rebecca typed rapidly, occasionally asking for clarification or more detail. "This is good," she said when they'd finished. Credible, specific, painting a picture of someone processing trauma, not experiencing psychosis. "But Noah, you need to prepare yourself for what comes next. The moment Marcus's attorneys find out Vivian's been staying with you, they're going to investigate every aspect of your life. Your finances, your employment history, your relationship with your late wife, your fitness as a parent, nothing will be off limits. Let them investigate. They won't find anything because there's nothing to find." Noah stood, ready to leave. "When will Vivian know about the psychiatric evaluation petition?" "She already knows. I called her right before I called you." Rebecca's expression softened. "She's terrified, Noah. She's convinced Marcus is going to succeed in having her committed, that this is the end of everything." "Where is she now?" "Still at your house, I assume. I told her to stay put, not to go anywhere or talk to anyone until we figure out our next move." Rebecca walked Noah to her office door. "You care about her, I can see that. But be careful. The line between helping someone and enabling their self-destruction can be thin." Noah didn't respond to that, just thanked Rebecca for her time and left. The drive back to his cottage felt endless, traffic crawling through Portland's late afternoon rush. By the time he pulled into his driveway, it was nearly 6 o'clock and dark, the December night falling early and heavy. The house was lit up, warm light spilling from every window. Through the kitchen window, Noah could see Vivian and Lily at the table, apparently making cookies based on the flour visible on every surface. It looked domestic, normal, like a scene from the life he'd given up hoping for. Then he opened the door and saw Vivian's face, ravaged with crying, eyes hollow with fear, and the illusion shattered. "You saw it," she said flatly. "The press conference." "Rebecca showed me." Noah moved into the kitchen, noting that Lily had flour in her hair and chocolate on her face. "Hey, Firefly, how are the cookies?" "We made chocolate chip and snickerdoodles." Lily bounced with excitement, blissfully unaware of the tension. "Vivian let me crack the eggs all by myself." "That's great." Noah forced a smile, ruffling her hair. "Why don't you go wash up for dinner?" Lily scampered off, and Noah turned to Vivian. "Are you okay?" "No." Vivian's voice was hollow. "I watched my husband tell the world I'm mentally ill on every news channel in the state. My phone has been ringing nonstop. Reporters, old friends, people I haven't talked to in years, all wanting to know if it's true, if I've really lost my mind." "You haven't." "Haven't I?" Vivian gestured around the kitchen. "I'm hiding in a stranger's house, making cookies with his daughter, convinced my billionaire husband is going to have me locked in a psychiatric facility. Maybe Marcus is right. Maybe I am delusional." Noah crossed to her, gripping her shoulders firmly. "Stop. Marcus is gaslighting you through the media now, and you're letting him. You're not crazy. You're not delusional. You're a woman escaping an abusive marriage, and he's using every weapon in his arsenal to drag you back. He's going to win, Noah. You saw those medical records Rebecca showed me. He's been planning this for years, building a case that I'm unstable. How do I fight that? With truth, with my testimony about your behavior over the past 5 days, with Rebecca's expertise and your own strength." Noah pulled her closer. "You don't give up now, Vivian. Not when you've come this far." Vivian sagged against him, and Noah held her while she cried silent tears into his shoulder. He thought about Rebecca's warning, about how helping Vivian could destroy everything he'd built. But standing there with her in his arms, he couldn't imagine doing anything else. "I'm scared," Vivian whispered. "I'm so scared of what he's going to do to me, to you, to Lily." "I know, but we're going to fight anyway. Together." Vivian pulled back, wiping at her tears. "Rebecca told me you're willing to testify, to make a formal statement." "Already did. Spent 2 hours at her office going through everything." "Noah, you can't. If Marcus finds out I've been staying here, he'll come after you. He'll... Let him come." Noah's voice was steel. "I'm not afraid of Marcus Laurent." "You should be. You have no idea what he's capable of." "Then help me understand. Explain exactly what we're up against so I can prepare." Vivian took a shaky breath, composing herself with visible effort. "Okay. You want to know what Marcus does to people who cross him? 3 years ago, a journalist wrote an article about some of Neurodyne's questionable data practices. Within a month, she'd been fired from her job based on fabricated plagiarism charges. Her husband left her. She lost custody of her kids. Last I heard, she was working retail in Arizona and couldn't get hired anywhere in journalism. That's one person, an extreme case. It's not extreme, it's standard." Vivian moved to the window, staring out at the dark yard. There was a former business partner who tried to sue Marcus for stealing his algorithms. The lawsuit was dismissed, but Marcus wasn't satisfied with just winning. He had the man audited by the IRS, investigated for tax fraud, dragged through courts until he was bankrupt. The man ended up losing his house, his company, everything. Noah felt cold spreading through his chest. "And you think he'll do that to me?" "I think he'll do worse because I actually matter to him. I'm not just a business rival or an annoying journalist. I'm his wife, his possession, and you've helped me escape him. He'll want to make an example of you." They stood in silence, the weight of that reality settling between them. Upstairs, Noah could hear Lily singing to herself in the bathroom, her voice innocent and happy. He thought about Rebecca's warning, about Marcus's investigators digging through his life, about all the ways this could spiral into catastrophe. "You should tell me to leave," Vivian said quietly. "You should protect yourself and Lily by cutting ties with me completely. That's what any rational person would do." "Probably." Noah moved to stand beside her at the window. "But I'm apparently not very rational these days." "Why?" Vivian turned to face him. "Why are you risking everything for someone you barely know?" Noah thought about all the careful answers he could give, about doing the right thing, about not being able to turn away from someone in need, about Emma teaching him compassion. But standing there in his kitchen with Vivian looking at him like he was either her salvation or her destruction, he found himself telling the truth. Because when you knocked on my door, I was already dead. Not literally, but dead in every way that mattered. I was surviving, going through motions, being a good father, but not really living, and then you showed up. And suddenly I remembered what it felt like to care about something beyond just getting through the day. Noah's voice roughened. Maybe that makes me selfish. Maybe I'm helping you because it makes me feel alive again, but I'd rather be selfish and alive than noble and numb. Vivian stared at him, with tears streaming down her face again. That's the most honest thing anyone said to me in 15 years. Then here's some more honesty. I'm terrified of what Marcus might do to us. I'm terrified of screwing up Lily's life by getting involved in your mess. But I'm more terrified of becoming the kind of person who could turn you away when you need help. So yeah, we're in this now. All the way. Before Noah could process what was happening, Vivian closed the distance between them and kissed him. Not the chaste kiss on the cheek from before, but a real kiss, desperate and grateful and full of everything neither of them could say out loud. For one perfect moment, Noah let himself kiss her back. Let himself feel something other than grief and fear and careful numbness. Vivian's hands were in his hair, and he could taste salt from her tears, and it was terrifying and exhilarating and completely insane. Then reality crashed back. Lily was upstairs. Vivian was married. This was the worst possible timing for the worst possible complication. Noah pulled back, breathing hard. We can't. I know. Vivian stepped away, looking as shaken as Noah felt. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. Don't apologize. Just, we can't let this get complicated in that way. Not now. Not when everything's already so fragile. You're right. Vivian wrapped her arms around herself. You're absolutely right. They stood on opposite sides of the kitchen, and Noah could feel the space between them charged with everything they weren't saying. Then Lily came thundering down the stairs, and they both had to paste on normal expressions, had to pretend the world hadn't just shifted on its axis. That night, after Lily was asleep and the cookies were put away and the kitchen was cleaned, Noah and Vivian sat at opposite ends of the couch, maintaining careful distance. They didn't talk about the kiss, didn't acknowledge the line they'd crossed. Instead, they talked logistics, about the psychiatric evaluation hearing scheduled for Wednesday, about Rebecca's strategy for fighting it, about what would happen if Marcus succeeded in having Vivian committed. If they lock me up, even for 72 hours, it's over, Vivian said flatly. Marcus will use that commitment as proof of everything he's been saying. No judge will believe me after that. Then we make sure it doesn't happen. Rebecca's good. She'll find a way to fight it. She's good, but she's not a miracle worker. Marcus has evidence, witnesses, a whole constructed narrative. All we have is the truth, and truth doesn't always win. Noah wanted to argue, wanted to promise everything would work out, but he'd learned the hard way that life didn't care about fairness or justice. Sometimes the drunk driver walked away while the innocent person died. Sometimes the billionaire with unlimited resources crushed anyone who challenged him. But sometimes, rarely, impossibly, the underdog won anyway. Get some sleep, Noah said finally. We've got 3 days before the hearing, 3 days to build our case and prepare for whatever Marcus throws at us. Vivian nodded, but neither of them moved. They sat there on opposite ends of the couch, not touching, but not leaving either, until exhaustion finally pulled them under. Noah woke on the couch at dawn, his neck stiff and his back protesting the awkward position he'd fallen asleep in. Across from him, Vivian was curled into the opposite corner, still asleep, her face peaceful in a way it never was when she was awake. He watched her for a moment, thinking about that kiss, about how easily he could complicate an already impossible situation. Then he forced himself to stand, to move into the kitchen and start coffee, to begin the routine that kept him grounded. Today was Monday. Today, Rebecca would officially file the divorce papers and the restraining order. Today, the war with Marcus Laurent became public and official. Vivian stirred as the coffee maker gurgled to life, sitting up slowly and wincing at her own stiff muscles. What time is it? 6:30. Rebecca wants us at her office by 9 to go over everything before filing. Noah poured 2 mugs, handing one to Vivian. You should probably wear the same clothes you wore yesterday. Look professional, put together. not like someone having a breakdown. Vivian took the coffee with a small smile. Thanks for the vote of confidence. You know what I mean. I do. She sipped the coffee, gathering herself. Noah, about last night, we don't have to talk about it. We do, actually, because I need you to know that I wasn't trying to manipulate you or complicate things. I was just grateful, overwhelmed, looking for comfort in a bad situation. Noah sat in the armchair across from her, maintaining distance. I get it, Vivian, and it's okay, but it can't happen again. I know. Vivian set down her mug. I'm still married, you have Lily to think about, and I'm currently in the middle of a legal war that could destroy both of us. The timing couldn't be worse. Exactly. They sat in awkward silence until Lily's footsteps sounded on the stairs. Then they both shifted into their careful roles. The helpful friend, the grateful house guest, nothing more complicated than that. Mrs. Chen arrived at 7:30 to take Lily to school, and if she noticed the tension between Noah and Vivian, she was kind enough not to mention it. After they left, Noah changed into the one suit he owned, bought for Emma's funeral and worn maybe 3 times since, while Vivian transformed herself back into the polished woman who looked like she belonged in expensive law offices. The drive to downtown Portland was silent, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Rebecca's office building looked even more intimidating in daylight, all glass and steel and money. Noah felt acutely out of place in his old suit with his landscaper's hands, but Vivian walked in like she owned the building, spine straight and head high. Rebecca met them in her office, dressed in a power suit that probably cost more than Noah's truck. Good morning, Vivian, you look ready. Noah, thank you for coming. I want to go over your statement one more time before we file. They spent the next hour reviewing every detail, Rebecca asking pointed questions about Vivian's behavior, her interactions with Lily, any signs of mental instability or erratic conduct. Noah answered honestly, describing a woman who was scared and processing trauma, but entirely rational and capable. This is good, Rebecca said finally. Marcus's attorneys are going to try to paint you as either a dupe who couldn't recognize mental illness or as someone romantically involved with Vivian and therefore biased. We need to be prepared for both angles. I can handle it, Noah said. Can you? Because when they ask if you have romantic feelings for Vivian, if you've kissed her, if there's been any physical intimacy, you need to be able to answer honestly and credibly. Rebecca's eyes were sharp. Have you? Noah felt heat rise in his face, but he met Rebecca's gaze steadily. We kissed once. Last night. That's it. Nothing else. Rebecca's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Vivian? He's telling the truth. It was a moment of weakness on my part, gratitude and fear getting confused. It won't happen again. Make sure it doesn't. Marcus will use any hint of infidelity to destroy your credibility and prove his claims that you're unstable and making poor decisions. Rebecca pulled up documents on her computer. Now, let's talk about what happens after I file these papers. She walked them through the timeline, filing at the courthouse at 10, Marcus being notified by noon, the restraining order going into effect immediately if approved by the judge. The psychiatric evaluation hearing was scheduled for Wednesday at 2, giving them less than 48 hours to prepare. The key is going to be establishing that Marcus has a pattern of controlling behavior, Rebecca explained. The fake medical records help us there. We can argue they're part of a long-term plan to discredit Vivian if she ever tried to leave. But we need more. More what? Vivian asked. Witnesses. People who've seen Marcus's controlling behavior firsthand. Friends, family, employees, anyone who can testify to the dynamic of your marriage. Vivian's expression fell. I don't have anyone. Marcus isolated me from everyone over the years. The few friends I had left stopped calling when I wouldn't take their calls anymore. When I canceled plans one too many times because Marcus said we had other obligations. What about your sister? You mentioned her before. Sarah lives in Boston. She and Marcus hate each other, which is why I rarely see her. He'd claim she's biased, that she's always been jealous of our marriage. Rebecca drummed her fingers on the desk, thinking. What about household staff? Someone who worked in your home and witnessed the dynamic. Marcus doesn't keep staff long-term. He cycles through people regularly, so no one gets too familiar with our private life. Vivian's voice was bitter. He thinks of everything, Rebecca. That's what you need to understand. Every aspect of our life together has been carefully controlled to leave me with no allies, no witnesses, no one who could support my version of events. Then we work with what we have. Noah's testimony, my cross-examination of Marcus's so-called medical experts, and your own account. Rebecca stood. It's not ideal, but it's what we've got. Now, I need you both to wait here while I go file these papers. The media is camped outside the courthouse, and I don't want Vivian photographed looking anything less than completely composed. After Rebecca left, Noah and Vivian sat in her office, the silence heavy between them. Through the window, they could see downtown Portland going about its Monday morning business, people rushing to work with coffee cups and briefcases, completely unaware that lives were being destroyed in offices like this one. I'm sorry, Vivian said suddenly, for dragging you into this, for kissing you, for everything. Stop apologizing. I made my own choices. Choices that might cost you everything. Vivian turned from the window. It's not too late, you know. You could still back out. Tell Rebecca you can't testify, that you need to protect Lily. Is that what you want? What I want doesn't matter. What matters is keeping you and Lily safe from Marcus's revenge. Noah stood, crossing to where Vivian stood by the window. You want to know what Emma used to tell me? When I was scared about becoming a father, about whether I could handle the responsibility. What? She said that fear is just love in disguise, that being scared of screwing up meant I cared enough to try to get it right. Noah held Vivian's gaze. I'm scared of what Marcus might do to us. Terrified, actually. But that fear tells me I care about you, about your safety, about you getting free from him. And I'd rather be scared and caring than safe and indifferent. Vivian's eyes filled with tears. You're a good man, Noah Bennett. I'm a stubborn man who doesn't know when to quit. There's a difference. They stood there by the window, not touching, but close enough to feel the pull between them, until Rebecca returned an hour later with news that the papers had been filed and Marcus had been served. The restraining order was approved. Marcus was legally prohibited from contacting Vivian or coming within 500 feet of her. How did he react? Vivian asked. His attorney accepted service, professional, no drama. Rebecca settled behind her desk. But I got a call on my way back. Marcus wants to meet, tomorrow, his office, to discuss settlement terms. Absolutely not, Noah said immediately. That's obviously a trap. Maybe, but it's also an opportunity. Rebecca looked at Vivian. If Marcus is willing to negotiate seriously, we might be able to avoid the psychiatric hearing entirely. He might offer real money, more than the prenup allows, just to make this go away quietly. Vivian shook her head. He's not offering settlement. He's offering surrender terms. He wants me to come to his territory, his office, where he has all the power, so he can intimidate me into dropping this. Then we don't go alone. I'll be there. We'll have the meeting recorded as part of settlement negotiations. And if he makes any threats or displays controlling behavior, it strengthens our case for Wednesday. Rebecca leaned forward. Vivian, I know you're scared of him, but we need to show the court that you're not too mentally fragile to face your husband, that you can sit in a room with him and maintain composure. Noah watched Vivian's face cycle through fear, anger, and finally determination. Fine, I'll meet with him, but Noah comes too. Vivian, Rebecca started. Noah comes or I don't go. I need someone there who's on my side, who Marcus can't buy or intimidate. Vivian's voice was steel. Those are my terms. Rebecca looked at Noah, clearly assessing whether having him there would help or hurt. Finally, she nodded. Okay, tomorrow, 10 in the morning, at Neurodyne headquarters. Noah can come as your emotional support, though he won't be allowed in the actual negotiation room. We'll need to brief him on what not to say or do. They spent the rest of the day preparing, Rebecca drilling Vivian on what to expect, how to respond to Marcus's manipulation tactics, what legal language to listen for in any settlement offer. Noah sat quietly, absorbing everything, trying to understand the chess game being played. By the time they left Rebecca's office, it was past 6 and Noah needed to get Lily from Mrs. Chen's house. Vivian came with him, both of them exhausted from the day's emotional warfare. Lily was full of stories about her day at school, chattering nonstop through dinner about a science experiment with vinegar and baking soda. Noah was grateful for her obliviousness, for the way children could exist in their own worlds untouched by adult complications. After Lily was in bed, Noah and Vivian sat in the kitchen, neither quite ready to face sleep. "Tell me about Neurodyne headquarters," Noah said. "What should I expect tomorrow?" "Glass and chrome, minimalist design that costs a fortune to look simple. Everything carefully curated to project power and control." Vivian wrapped her hands around her tea mug. "Marcus's office is on the top floor, corner suite with views of Mount Hood on clear days. He designed it himself, made sure every detail reinforced his position." "Sounds lovely." "It's a temple to ego." Vivian's smile was sad. "I used to love visiting him at work in the early years. Thought it was romantic, this brilliant man building something revolutionary. Then I realized he wasn't building something. He was building himself a kingdom. And I was just another possession in it." Noah thought about his own small cottage, about working with his hands and driving a beat-up truck. His life probably looked pathetic compared to Marcus Laurent's empire, but at least it was his. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Noah said, "don't let him make you feel small. You're not asking for his permission anymore. You're telling him you're done." Easy to say, harder to do when you're sitting across from someone who's controlled every aspect of your life for 15 years. "Then remember, you've got me and Rebecca right outside that door. And if he tries anything, if he threatens you or makes you uncomfortable, you walk out. You've got that power now, even if it doesn't feel like it." Vivian reached across the table, taking Noah's hand. "Thank you for everything. I know I keep saying that, but I don't think you understand how much this means. You could have sent me away that first night, but you didn't. You chose kindness over caution." "Or stupidity over sense," Noah said, but he was smiling. "Jury's still out on which." That night, Noah lay in bed thinking about tomorrow, about walking into Marcus Laurent's headquarters and coming face to face with the man who'd spent 15 years destroying Vivian's sense of self. Part of him was terrified, but another part, the part that had been dormant since Emma died, was almost looking forward to it. To finally having an enemy he could face instead of abstract grief and loss. Tuesday morning arrived cold and clear, the kind of December day that made the Northwest look like a postcard. Noah wore his suit again, feeling like a kid playing dress-up. Vivian wore a navy dress and heels, her hair pulled back severely, makeup perfect. She looked like she was preparing for battle. Rebecca met them in the Neurodyne lobby, which was exactly as Vivian had described, all glass and chrome and expensive emptiness. A receptionist directed them to the top floor where Marcus Laurent's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s, greeted them with professional coldness. "Ms. Laurent, Attorney Chen, and you must be—" She looked at Noah with obvious dismissal. "Noah Bennett. I'm here to support Vivian." The assistant's expression suggested Noah was about as important as the furniture, but she led them to a waiting area outside Marcus's office. "Mr. Laurent will be with you shortly." "Mr. Bennett, you'll wait here while the others meet with him." Noah settled into an uncomfortable modern chair while Rebecca and Vivian were ushered into the inner office. Through the glass walls, because of course Marcus's office had glass walls, Noah could see a large space with that view of Mount Hood Vivian had mentioned. And in the center of it, rising from behind a massive desk, was Marcus Laurent himself. He was exactly what Noah had expected and somehow worse. Tall, fit, silver-haired, and handsome in that way wealthy men managed to be regardless of age. He wore a suit that probably cost $5,000, and he moved with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his life. Noah watched as Marcus greeted Vivian with what looked like genuine concern, touching her arm gently, guiding her to a chair like she was fragile. It was a performance, Noah realized. Everything about Marcus was carefully calibrated to project exactly the image he wanted. The meeting lasted 20 minutes. Noah couldn't hear what was being said through the glass, but he could read body language. Marcus, calm and reasonable, gesturing gently as he spoke. Rebecca, taking notes, occasionally interjecting. And Vivian, sitting rigid in her chair, hands clenched in her lap, not looking directly at her husband. Then something shifted. Marcus leaned forward, his expression hardening. Vivian shook her head sharply. Rebecca stood, gathering her papers. Marcus said something that made Vivian flinch, and Noah was on his feet before he consciously decided to move. He crossed the waiting area and opened the office door, breaking whatever protocol he was supposed to be following. All three people inside turned to look at him. "Is everything all right?" Noah directed the question at Vivian, ignoring Marcus entirely. "Who is this?" Marcus's voice was smooth, cultured, with just a hint of amusement. Vivian, have you hired additional security? This is Noah Bennett, Rebecca said firmly. He's here as Miss Laurent's emotional support. Marcus's eyes traveled over Noah, assessment and dismissal happening in seconds. I see. And does your emotional support typically interrupt legal negotiations? Only when it looks like someone's being threatened, Noah replied evenly. Threatened? Marcus's laugh was genuinely amused. Mr. Bennett, I'm trying to help my wife. She's clearly unwell, and rather than fight her in court, I'm offering her a generous settlement and the psychiatric care she desperately needs. She doesn't need psychiatric care, she needs a divorce. Marcus's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. You've known my wife for what, a week? And you think you understand her mental state better than the doctors who've been treating her for years? Those doctors are fabrications, and we both know it. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Marcus stood slowly, and Noah saw calculation happening behind his eyes. I think we're done here. Rebecca, when your client is ready to discuss settlement seriously, have her call my office, without her support staff. Rebecca was already ushering Vivian toward the door. Noah followed, but not before making eye contact with Marcus one last time. What he saw there made his blood run cold, not anger, but something much more dangerous. Assessment. Marcus was evaluating Noah as a threat, figuring out exactly how to destroy him. They didn't speak until they were out of the building and in Rebecca's car, the doors closed against the December cold. Then Vivian broke down, her careful composure shattering. He offered me $3 million, she said through tears. $3 million to sign papers saying I'm mentally unstable, that I've made false accusations against him, and that I'll seek psychiatric treatment at a facility of his choosing for at least 6 months. That's not treatment, Noah said from the back seat. That's imprisonment. Exactly. Rebecca pulled out of the parking garage. He wants to lock you away, discredit you completely, and make this all go away. When you refused, he made it clear what would happen at the hearing tomorrow. He has 5 doctors prepared to testify about your mental instability, plus witnesses who will claim they've seen you behaving erratically. What witnesses? Vivian demanded. I've barely left the house in years except for events with Marcus. People he's paid to lie. We can challenge them, but it's going to come down to credibility. His word and his paid experts versus yours and Noah's testimony. Noah leaned forward. What about the fabricated medical records? Can't we prove those are fake? We're trying. I have investigators working on it, but these records are sophisticated. They've been inserted into real systems, real hospitals. Proving they're false will take time we don't have. Rebecca glanced at Vivian in the rear-view mirror. I'm not going to lie to you. Tomorrow is going to be brutal. Marcus is going to paint you as unstable, possibly dangerous, and claim he's just trying to help you get treatment. And if he succeeds, if the judge orders the psychiatric evaluation, then you're committed for 72 hours. And during that time, Marcus will use your commitment as evidence to freeze your assets, claim you're incompetent to make legal decisions, and potentially even petition for a conservatorship. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Conservatorship would mean Marcus controlling every aspect of Vivian's life legally, permanently. She'd have no rights, no autonomy, no escape. We won't let it get that far, Noah said firmly. Whatever it takes, we fight this. Rebecca pulled up to a coffee shop downtown where they had agreed to debrief. Inside, at a corner table, she pulled out her laptop and showed them the case she was building for tomorrow. It was thorough, professional, and terrifyingly thin. They had Noah's testimony and Vivian's own account. Marcus had 5 doctors, multiple witnesses, years of fabricated medical records, and unlimited resources. I need you to understand the odds, Rebecca said bluntly. We're probably going to lose tomorrow. The judge will likely order the evaluation, if only to be cautious. But losing the battle doesn't mean losing the war. If you're evaluated and found to be mentally competent, which you will be, that undermines Marcus's entire narrative. Unless the evaluators are also on Marcus's payroll, Vivian said bitterly. State-appointed evaluators can't be bought that easily. And if there's even a hint of bias, we appeal immediately. Rebecca closed her laptop. But Vivian, you need to prepare yourself mentally for the possibility that you'll be committed tomorrow, that you'll spend 3 days in a psychiatric facility being evaluated. Noah watched Vivian process this, saw terror and determination war across her face. "Okay," she said finally. "If that's what has to happen, then I'll survive it. But Noah, Lily can't know about this. Can't know where I am or why." "We'll tell her you had to go out of town for a few days," Noah agreed. "She doesn't need to know the details." They spent the rest of the afternoon preparing for every possible scenario tomorrow might bring. What Vivian should wear, what she should say, how she should react to Marcus's testimony. Rebecca was merciless in her preparation, drilling Vivian on staying calm no matter what accusations were thrown at her. By the time they left the coffee shop, it was nearly dark and Noah needed to collect Lily from school. Vivian came with him, both of them trying to act normal for Lily's sake, but Noah could see the strain in every line of Vivian's body. That night, after Lily was asleep, they sat in Noah's kitchen and didn't pretend everything was fine. Tomorrow, Vivian would walk into a courtroom and Marcus would try to have her declared mentally incompetent. And there was a very real chance he would succeed. "I'm scared," Vivian admitted. "More scared than I've ever been." "I know, but you're not alone in this." Noah reached across the table, taking her hand. "Whatever happens tomorrow, we'll deal with it together. Noah, if I get committed, if Marcus succeeds, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't let him make you disappear. Don't let him intimidate you into silence. Keep fighting. Keep being a witness to what he did to me." Vivian's grip tightened. "Someone needs to remember the truth, even if the courts don't believe it. I promise. But you're going to be fine. Rebecca's good, you're credible, and the truth has a way of coming out." Noah wished he believed that as much as he was trying to make Vivian believe it. Wednesday morning arrived too quickly. They were at the courthouse by 1:30, giving themselves time to prepare before the 2 o'clock hearing. The courtroom was smaller than Noah had expected, wood-paneled and formal, with a judge's bench that seemed designed to intimidate. Marcus arrived precisely at 2 with an entourage, 3 lawyers, 2 of the doctors who'd be testifying, and his assistant taking notes. He looked at Vivian with what might have been genuine sadness, like she was a problem that pained him to address. The hearing began with Marcus's lead attorney laying out their case. A disturbed woman who'd fled her loving husband, made wild accusations of abuse with no evidence, and was clearly experiencing a psychiatric crisis. They called their first doctor, a psychiatrist who claimed to have treated Vivian for depression and anxiety for the past 8 years. Rebecca's cross-examination was scalpel sharp. Where had these sessions taken place? The doctor named a clinic Vivian had never visited. What specific treatments had been prescribed? He listed medications Vivian had never taken. Did he have session notes? Yes, detailed ones, which Rebecca requested copies of for verification. The second doctor was more prepared, having actual records from a hospital Vivian had visited once for a minor procedure 3 years ago. But Rebecca pointed out that those records had been modified after the fact, that the original admission report made no mention of psychiatric issues, that someone had clearly altered them after the initial filing. Noah watched the judge, a woman in her late 50s named Collins, and tried to read her expression. She seemed skeptical of Marcus's doctors, but not dismissive. She was listening, evaluating, trying to sort truth from manipulation. Then Marcus himself took the stand, and Noah felt Vivian go rigid beside him. Marcus spoke with perfect composure about his concern for his wife, about her increasingly erratic behavior over the past year, about his desperate attempts to get her help that she kept refusing. He was brilliant at it, hitting exactly the right notes of worried husband, his voice catching with emotion at just the right moments. "I love my wife," Marcus said, looking directly at Vivian. "I only want her to get the help she needs. If she truly believes I've abused her, then that delusion is exactly why she needs psychiatric evaluation. I'm not asking the court to commit her permanently, just to have her evaluated by objective professionals so we can determine what treatment she needs." Rebecca's cross-examination tried to crack his performance, asking about the tracking, the financial control, the isolation. Marcus had answers for everything. The tracking was for her safety, she'd been mugged once, and he'd worried ever since. The financial control was standard for someone in his position, protecting their assets from potential fraud. The isolation was her choice. She'd withdrawn from friends gradually over the years. It was masterful gaslighting performed for an audience, and Noah could see the judge being swayed by it. Marcus wasn't presenting as an abuser. He was presenting as a concerned husband, dealing with a difficult situation as compassionately as possible. Then Rebecca called Noah to the stand. Noah had never testified in court before, had never been cross-examined by lawyers trained to destroy credibility. But he'd promised Vivian he'd tell the truth, so he did. He described the night she'd shown up at his door, her behavior over the past week and a half, her interactions with Lily. He spoke about her fear, but also her rationality, her ability to make clear decisions and articulate her situation coherently. Marcus's attorney, a man named Patterson, who looked like he billed $1,000 an hour, approached Noah with barely concealed contempt. "Mr. Bennett, how long have you known Mrs. Laurent?" "About 10 days." 10 days. "And in those 10 days, has a romantic relationship developed between you?" Noah felt heat rise in his face, but kept his voice steady. "No." "Have you kissed Miss Laurent?" "Once, briefly. It was, 'Yes or no, Mr. Bennett?'" "Yes." Patterson smiled like he'd just won. "So you've developed romantic feelings for a married woman you've known for 10 days, and now you're testifying that she's mentally stable. Isn't it possible you're biased?" "It's possible I care about her well-being, yes, but caring about someone doesn't make me blind to mental illness. I raised a daughter largely alone for 6 years. I know what instability looks like, and Vivian doesn't show any signs of it." "You're a landscaper, correct? Not a mental health professional? Correct? So your opinion on Ms. Laurent's mental state is worth exactly what? Nothing?" Rebecca objected, and the judge sustained it, but the damage was done. Noah looked like exactly what Marcus wanted him to look like, a blue-collar nobody who'd fallen for a rich woman's sob story and was too naive to see he was being manipulated. The hearing lasted 3 hours. By the time closing arguments finished, Noah felt hollowed out from the experience of watching Marcus systematically dismantle Vivian's credibility while maintaining his own facade of concerned husband. Judge Collins took 15 minutes to consider before rendering her decision. This is a difficult case with serious allegations on both sides. However, given the medical evidence presented and Mr. Laurent's documented concerns about his wife's mental state, I'm ordering a psychiatric evaluation. Ms. Laurent will be committed to Northwest Psychiatric Hospital for 72 hours for evaluation. The results will be submitted to this court and will inform future proceedings in the divorce case. Vivian's hands were shaking, but she stood with dignity as the bailiff approached to escort her out. Noah started to follow, but Rebecca grabbed his arm. "You can't go with her, but I'll make sure she has everything she needs." Noah watched helplessly as Vivian was led away, her back straight and her head high, even as her world collapsed around her. Marcus stood with his attorneys, looking satisfied but not triumphant, maintaining his careful performance of the worried husband to the very end. As Noah left the courtroom, Marcus intercepted him in the hallway. Up close, he was even more intimidating, taller than Noah by several inches, with cold eyes that assessed and dismissed him in seconds. "Mr. Bennett, I understand you've been very helpful to my wife during her crisis. I appreciate you keeping her safe." Noah didn't respond, just stared at Marcus with undisguised contempt. "But here's the thing about Good Samaritans," Marcus continued, his voice dropping so only Noah could hear. "They always think they're the heroes of the story. They help the damsel in distress, feel good about themselves, never realizing they're actually just supporting someone's delusions." "Vivian isn't delusional. She's scared of you." "Is she? Or is she a very good actress who convinced a lonely widower that she needed saving?" Marcus's smile was sharp. "I've done some research on you, Noah. Single father, struggling financially, isolated. Must have felt good, having a beautiful woman show up and make you feel important again. This conversation is over." Noah turned to leave. "One more thing." Marcus's voice stopped him. "I know Vivian's been staying with you. I know about your daughter Lily, 6 years old, attends Riverside Elementary. And I know that your financial situation is precarious enough that one bad month could cost you your house." Noah's blood ran cold. "Are you threatening my daughter?" "I'm simply pointing out facts. You've inserted yourself into a situation you don't understand, and there are consequences to that." Marcus moved closer, his voice deadly quiet. "Back away from my wife, Mr. Bennett. Let the professionals evaluate her. Let her get the help she needs. Because if you continue to interfere, I'll make sure you lose everything. Your business, your home, custody of your daughter. All of it gone because you couldn't mind your own business." Noah stepped close to Marcus, close enough to see the coldness in his eyes. "Let me make something clear to you. I don't care about your money or your threats. Vivian's not delusional, she's not crazy, and she's not going back to you, so do your worst. Marcus studied Noah with something that might have been respect or might have been rage. All right then. You've chosen your side. Good luck with the consequences. Noah walked away before he did something stupid like take a swing at a billionaire in a courthouse hallway. He made it to his truck before the shaking started, rage and fear coursing through him in equal measures. Marcus had just threatened Lily, had threatened to take away everything Noah had. And the worst part was, Marcus had the resources to follow through on every threat. Noah sat in his truck, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to decide what to do next. He could back away like Marcus wanted, could protect Lily by abandoning Vivian. It would be the smart choice, the safe choice. But Noah thought about Vivian's face when she'd talked about wanting to die rather than stay in her marriage. About her hands shaking as she described 15 years of systematic abuse. About the way she'd looked at him like he was the first person in years to see her as human instead of possession. He couldn't abandon her now, not even to keep Lily safe. Because teaching Lily to protect herself by letting others suffer wasn't the kind of safety worth having. Noah drove to the psychiatric hospital where Vivian was being held. They wouldn't let him see her, but he left flowers at the desk with a note that said simply, "Still fighting, don't give up." The next 72 hours were the longest of Noah's life. He went through the motions, work, taking care of Lily, maintaining normalcy. But his mind was constantly at that hospital, wondering how Vivian was doing, whether the evaluators were legitimate or another layer of Marcus's manipulation. Rebecca called twice with updates. Vivian was cooperating with the evaluation, answering questions honestly, maintaining composure despite the circumstances. The evaluators seemed professional, thorough, not obviously biased. It was the best they could hope for. On the third day, Noah was finishing a landscaping job when Rebecca called with news. She's being released. The evaluation came back clear. No signs of mental illness, no indication of the disorders Marcus's doctors claimed she had. They're recommending she continue with individual therapy to process trauma, but there's no basis for involuntary commitment. Noah felt relief crash through him like a wave. When can she leave? She's being discharged now. I'm picking her up and bringing her to my office. Can you meet us there in an hour? Noah made it in 45 minutes, nearly running through downtown Portland to Rebecca's building. He found them in her office, Vivian looking exhausted but somehow lighter, like a weight had been lifted. "Hey," Noah said from the doorway. Vivian looked up and her face transformed with relief and something deeper. "Hey yourself!" Rebecca gave them a moment, busying herself with paperwork. Noah crossed to where Vivian sat and pulled her into a hug, feeling her shake with silent sobs against his shoulder. "You did it," he murmured. "You survived." "We're not done yet." Vivian pulled back, wiping at her eyes. "The evaluation helps, but Marcus still has the prenup. We still have to fight for an actual settlement." "About that." Rebecca looked up from her desk. "We might have caught a break. One of my investigators found something while you were being evaluated. The doctor who signed most of those fabricated medical records. He's been investigated twice before for falsifying documents. And one of Marcus's paid witnesses, she's actually a Neural Dyne employee, works in Marcus's executive suite." "Can we use that?" Noah asked. "We can try. It won't be easy. Marcus will claim the doctor was legitimate and the witness just happened to work for him. But it creates doubt, establishes a pattern of manipulation." Rebecca pulled up documents on her computer. "And there's something else. Your sister Sarah called me while you were committed. She wants to testify." Vivian shook her head immediately. "No, Marcus will destroy her. He has connections in Boston, resources to make her life hell. She knows that. She's willing to risk it anyway." Rebecca turned the computer screen toward Vivian, showing an email. "She says she's been waiting for you to fight back for 15 years, and now that you finally are, she's not going to let you do it alone." Vivian read the email with tears streaming down her face. "She has 2 kids, a career. Marcus could ruin all of that. She's willing to take that risk. The question is, are you willing to let her help?" Vivian looked at Noah, then back at Rebecca. "Yes. If Sarah wants to fight with me, I'm not going to stop her." Over the next 2 weeks, they built their case. Sarah flew in from Boston and gave a deposition describing years of watching Marcus isolate and control her sister. They found 3 former Neurodyne employees willing to testify about Marcus's vindictive behavior toward people who crossed him. The investigation into the fabricated medical records uncovered enough irregularities to cast serious doubt on their legitimacy. And through it all, Marcus fought back with everything he had. He filed motion after motion, tried to have Rebecca disbarred for unethical conduct, hired investigators to dig into Noah's past, looking for anything to discredit him. He offered Vivian increasingly large settlements, $5 million, $7 million, $10 million, each one contingent on her signing an NDA and admitting to mental health struggles. Each time, Vivian refused. Noah's life became a careful balance of work, caring for Lily, and supporting Vivian through the legal battle. Marcus made good on his threat to make things difficult. Suddenly, Noah's biggest landscaping clients canceled contracts, citing vague concerns about reliability. His truck failed inspection for reasons that seemed questionable. His mortgage company sent letters about missed payments he'd already made. But Noah had spent 6 years learning to survive on very little, and he refused to be intimidated. He took odd jobs, picked up extra work, found ways to keep his head above water. And every time Marcus pushed, Noah pushed back harder. The final settlement hearing came 8 months after Vivian had first knocked on Noah's door. 8 months of legal warfare, of Marcus trying to destroy everyone connected to Vivian, of fighting for every inch of freedom. They walked into that courtroom with Sarah, with Rebecca, with evidence of Marcus's systematic abuse and manipulation. And they watched as the judge, a different one this time, after Rebecca had successfully argued that Judge Collins had been biased, reviewed everything and rendered her decision. The prenuptial agreement was invalidated on the grounds that it had been signed under duress and based on false pretenses. Vivian was awarded $8 million in settlement, plus spousal support of $30,000 a month for 5 years. The divorce was finalized, and a permanent restraining order was issued against Marcus. Noah watched Vivian's face as the judgment was read, saw disbelief give way to relief, give way to something like joy. She'd done it. She'd actually escaped. Outside the courtroom, with Sarah hugging her and Rebecca looking satisfied, Vivian turned to Noah. "Come home with me." "Vivian, not like that. I mean, I bought a house, a real house, not a mansion or a statement piece, just a normal house in Northeast Portland with a yard and a porch, and I want you to see it." Noah followed her to an address in a quiet neighborhood, and when they pulled up, he understood immediately why she'd chosen it. The house was modest but charming, with a big backyard and a detached garage that would be perfect for restoration work. "I was thinking," Vivian said as they stood in the empty living room, "maybe I could talk you into being my landscaper. The yard's a disaster, and I have no idea what to do with it. I think I could make time for that. And maybe, once the yard's done, you could help me set up a workshop in the garage. I'm going to start taking photography jobs again, and I'll need storage for equipment." Noah smiled. "I could probably help with that too." Vivian moved closer, her voice dropping. "And maybe, when enough time has passed and things aren't so complicated, we could try this thing between us for real. Not gratitude or fear or crisis, just two people who care about each other seeing where it goes." Noah thought about Emma, about the 6 years he'd spent protecting himself from exactly this kind of risk. But he also thought about what Emma would have told him, that fear was just love in disguise, that being scared of getting hurt meant caring enough to try. "I'd like that," he said, "when the time is right." "When the time is right," Vivian agreed. 6 months later, Noah was helping Vivian plant roses in her front yard, while Lily supervised from the porch, offering detailed critiques of their technique. The yard had been transformed from wasteland to garden, and Vivian had opened a small photography studio downtown that was already getting good word of mouth. Noah's landscaping business had recovered from Marcus's sabotage, helped by referrals from Vivian's growing network of friends and clients. Marcus himself had mostly disappeared after the divorce, though they heard occasional rumors about him dating a younger woman who looked unsettlingly like Vivian had at 26. "He's doing it again," Vivian said when she heard that news, "finding someone vulnerable to control." "Maybe she'll be stronger than he expects," Noah replied. "Like someone else I know." Vivian smiled, leaning against him as they surveyed their work. The moment felt right in a way Noah hadn't experienced since Emma died. Complete, genuine, earned. "Daddy," Lily called from the porch. "Can Vivian stay for dinner?" Noah looked at Vivian, saw his own hope reflected in her eyes. Yeah, Firefly. She can stay for dinner. That night, the three of them sat around Noah's kitchen table eating spaghetti and arguing about whether penguins or dolphins were cooler animals. It was normal, domestic, nothing special. It was everything. Later, after Lily was in bed, Noah and Vivian sat on the porch, watching stars emerge in the December sky. A year had passed since that desperate knock on his door, since Vivian had crashed into his life like a storm. Thank you, Vivian said quietly, for opening the door that night, for not sending me away. Thank you for knocking, Noah replied, for reminding me what it feels like to be alive. Vivian took his hand, interlacing their fingers. So what now? Noah thought about all the careful answers he could give, about maintaining boundaries and taking things slow. But sitting there with Vivian, with his daughter sleeping safely upstairs and a future that felt possible for the first time in years, he found himself smiling. Now we live, he said simply, together. And in that moment, with Vivian beside him and stars overhead, and hope replacing the careful numbness he'd wrapped himself in for 6 years, Noah Bennett finally felt like he'd come home. The truck restoration took another year to complete, but when it was finally done, Noah taught Lily to drive it in the empty lot behind Vivian's house. Vivian photographed the moment, capturing father and daughter laughing as the old engine roared to life, capturing the joy of things made whole again after being broken. They were their own kind of family now, imperfect, unconventional, built from the wreckage of loss and abuse and hard-won freedom. But they were theirs, chosen and fought for, and real. Noah had once told Vivian she could share his bed only if she shared his forever. In the end, she chose both. And together, they built something stronger than anything that had tried to break them. A life filled with love, with laughter, with the quiet courage of people who'd survived darkness and chosen light anyway. It wasn't the life Noah had planned, but it was the life he needed, the one worth fighting for, the one that proved that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is open your door to a stranger in a storm and trust that the chaos they bring might just be the beginning of something beautiful.